Chapter 71 Music produced by females were usually gentle and touching. Chu Qing-ju leaned back against the cushion, her index finger slowly caressing the rim of her teacup. She watched the flower petals fall on Chu Yusu's hair. The wind blew and the petals all fell down, displaying a special kind of charm. Due to the influence of her profession in the previous life, she liked admiring beauties of all types. A plainly dressed beauty, hair flying in the midst of a rain of flower petals, it was a beautiful scene. Even more so when the beauty's music was also pleasing to the ear. The drizzling rains are moisturizing the streets of the capital, the color of grass can be seen far yet not near, it is the best attribute of summer, and definitely wins over the colors of the capital. Chu Yusu's voice was light as she recited a poem describing the spring. Her fingers stopped moving, leaving behind the perfect ending for the song. The surrounding people woke up from the music. Some clapped while others gasped. But there wasn't anyone who dared to dampen the spirits by mentioning that this Chia was a daughter of a duke. Beautiful person, beautiful song, He-hing played with the wine cup and praised insincerely, good. To receive a compliment from her Ji, that's her good fortune. Chu Shi may only be Ben Wang's Cifei, but she is also Ursao's Mimi. So she can call her Ji brother. He Yuan smiled as he raised a cup to He-hing, the person is beautiful, the wine even more so. Let's have another cup. Sitting on the right-hand side of He-hing, He-ming heard the words and felt that they were strange. He looked at the Chia sitting by the Qin, and then at Ji, his brow furrowing. Was Sanji purposefully trying to humiliate Ji? Sandy is joking, He-hing didn't get angry and smiled instead. He gave a disinterested look at Chu Yusu. Sandy is gracious enough to have your beloved Chia to play a song for us, and allow us to see what is meant by the person is beautiful, the song even more so. So it should be Ji toasting you. This Ku Su might have been a noble lady of a Gong Fu, but now she was in your Rui Wang Fu. You let your woman come out and display herself, it didn't have anything to do with him. If you don't find that embarrassing, what could he be afraid of? When he finished talking, He-hing turned to look at He-ming and asked, CD, don't you think we should toast Lao-san? He-ming showed a confused expression as he raised his cup and smiled sincerely. You toast Sanji and thank Sanji for being so welcoming. There's no need to be so polite. Just a Chia, she's nothing worth treasuring. He Yuan gritted his teeth as he drank down the cup of wine, the fire roaring inside. Ah, Sandy is very right. Let's drink, let's drink. He-hing laughed as he raised the cup and called for the people seated nearby to drink as well. Under the pear tree, Chu Yusu's fingernails pierced her palm. A drop of vibrantly crimson blood fell on the Jiao Wei zither. Her jade-like fingertip roughly wiped away the drop. The index finger swiped at the strings and a harsh ambush from 10 sides was played. Ambush from 10 sides, the murderous intent from all sides, the danger from all sides. Your Fu Ce Fei has done a good performance. He Gui Nian took a drink of tea and smiled as she looked at the woman playing. This Gunyang has brilliant talent and is as beautiful as a flower, and plays such a good zither. No wonder Sandy desperately wanted to take her into the Fu. What did having so many skills do for her? Wasn't she still shameless for becoming someone else's Chia? Qin Bailu smiled insincerely at He Gui Nian before her gaze fell onto Chu Qing-ju. That isn't all. It's not just Wang Yi, even I usually like listening to her songs. Ersao's Mimi is a very rare kind of female. Hearing this, Chu Qing-ju sighed. It's San Shu and San Daimei who have the good fortune. Before I'd married, San Mei lived with my stepmother. We rarely saw each other, much less admire San Mei's musical talents. It's only at Daimei's Fu that I have the good fortune. No matter what, I have to thank San Daimei. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had many chances to hear San Mei's songs in this lifetime. She smiled, looking deeply moved. it's San Daimai who has good fortune, to have such a good assistant in helping to take care of San Shu. He Gui Nian couldn't help but feel awe after hearing Chu Qingju's words. She was really worthy of being Daimai. She was a perfect match in heaven with Di. Even the way she spoke was the same method of killing without seeing blood. She turned her head to look. As expected, Qin Bailu's expression had changed. Any woman, after hearing such words, wouldn't feel comfortable. What woman was willing to share her husband with a talented and beautiful Jie? Thanks Saw. I hope Saw will have the same good fortune in the future. Qin Bailu raised a teacup and took a drink, trying her best to make the smile on her face appear natural. Not everyone could have this kind of good fortune. I won't try to hope. Chu Qingju gave a wide smile as she continued, just listening isn't very interesting. San Daimai, why don't you call some beauties for a dance? That would be enjoyable. Qin Bailu forced out a small smile. The dancers have already been prepared. Since Saw wishes to admire the dances of beautiful women, Di Mei will have the servants prepare. Did she think that Rui Wang Fu was a playhouse, that she could order whatever? Qin Bailu indicated for the already prepared program to continue. Very quickly, dancers in white dresses with green girdles appeared in the garden. There were also musicians accompanying them from the side. The entire garden was filled with noise. As the atmosphere became busier, Chu Qingju's gaze swept across the male guests opposite her. These men were either drinking, changing cups, or using the silver chopsticks to tap along with the music. For some reason, she thought of the Song of the Pipa Player by Bai Ju Yi. Written in it was, the hairpins and silver combs broke as they were used to tap the beat, the red dress was dirted by spilled wine, this year's cheer repeats next year, the autumn moon and spring winds pass in leisure. This was almost the entire truth. Luxury would disappear. Men were greedy for fresh and beautiful, but a woman's youth was so short. After the best times had passed, where is the man's heart? After watching half of the dancing, He Yuan pointed at the dancer leading the troupe. Ji, what do you think of that one? He Hing smiled as he looked at He Yuan. He slowly drawled, her beauty is above average, but not my type. He Yuan had been waiting for the other's compliment so he could give his brother a beautiful woman. He hadn't thought that He Hing would reply with such words. He stilled for a moment before asking, what is Ji's preference? With one look, the heart feels pleased, that is my preference. He Hing put down the wine cup in his hand. Taking the stance of the elder brother, he lectured seriously, Sandi, no matter how many beautiful women there are, it's just flowers on the gold. A man shouldn't be too lustful. The so-called houses of beauty and happy dens are the easiest ways to wear down the drive of men. We are all young, we should put more attention on state affairs and try to lessen the burden for Fu Wang. He Yuan didn't manage to give out the woman and got lectured in return, causing him to almost lose the smile on his face. He put his wine cup on the table. Ji is right to scold me. These people are just for pleasure, and cannot be taken seriously. I made Ji worry, it's Didi's fault. I know you are usually mature, I just said a few words. He smiled as he raised the wine cup, come, drink. He Ming widened his eyes as he watched Ji push away the beauty like this, and managed to scold San Ji as well. He instantly felt awe rise for Ji. The story of Rui Wang appreciating the dancing and wanting to give Duan Wang a woman passed into Chu Qingju's ears only when they had started the noon meal. She didn't change expression and blankly stated, to receive a beautiful woman as a gift, that's a good thing. Such a pity you won't be bringing that beauty home. He Gui Nian smiled as she wiped her hands dry. She looked at Chu Qingju as she grinned, my Di has said, no matter how beautiful the woman, it's still just flowers on the gold. It's enough to have only one who pleases the heart. He also said that men should pay more attention on state affairs. The bunch of womenfolk on the side admired Chu Qingju's good fortune. One said that Rui Wang's conduct was of good taste, another said Duan Wang was illustrious. Both families were complimented, and even He Gui Nian was praised for having two good brothers. Chu Qingju heard these people's words and couldn't help but think, the pitiful little fourth he had been forgotten by these womenfolk again. Qin Bailu looked at the happy smile on Chu Qingju's face. The sourness in her heart seemed to have reached her throat. She was the one with higher birth than Chu Qingju, and she was the more talented. Her husband was more favored by Fu Huang, but why was it that the other was better than her in every aspect? Her popo was warm to her, her husband loved her, and even her clothing and jewelry were more sumptuous than her. She was the one who should be more proud, right? Except for the fact that Chu Qingju was more beautiful, where else could she win? The heavens weren't fair. This type of vulgar woman could have such a good life. But why could she not receive the love of her husband, the satisfaction of her popo, and she had to compete for a man with those shirchie who couldn't even be seen out in public? Those ordinary rouge and common powders cannot compare to Ursaw's beauty, Qin Bailu opined. It's no surprise that Duan Wang doesn't have an interest in those dancers. These words seemed to be complimenting her, but why did it not sound right? Chu Qingju smiled as she looked at Qin Bailu. San Daimiai's words are really making me embarrassed. Did Jia had mocked me already and now you've come to take a go? Us women's youth is only these short few years. Whatever beauty that exists, it becomes nothing. Many of the womenfolk had been married for a long time. After hearing Chu Qingju's words, they couldn't help but agree. Duan Wang Fei's words were very truthful. Who hadn't been young once? But out of the people present, some always had the love and respect of their husbands, and some had nothing to say to their husbands. So the thing that is beauty, it can only be for a short time, whose beauty lasts for eternity. In Shi Su Yuan, Chu Yu Su calmly watched as Yao Shi cleaned her wounds. Hearing the chatter and laughter outside, she smiled bitterly. Today, I've lost all my honor. Now, she was regretful, but it was too late. Shao Jia. Yao Shi comforted with red eyes. Shao Jia, don't think too much. You still have many days ahead of you. Yes, long days. Chu Yu Su stared dazedly at the half-open door. She remembered the conversation between Duan Wang and Wang Yi. So she was nothing but an amusement. Amusement /N. Chapter 72. After the noon meal, the parade of people spread into the pear forest. They played Tu Hu, I, and ordered a few shows before everyone started to make their farewells. Chu Qingju seemed to be fated to be enemies with Qin Bailu and naturally took the chance to bid farewell. Both Jin and Princess and Tian Luoshi also stood to make their farewell. Qin Bailu insincerely tried to detain them, and seeing it didn't work, she walked a few steps to send them off. She had just walked a few steps when she saw Duan Wang walked in their direction. She slightly lowered her head, looking only at the corner of Duan Wang's embroidered robe and dark boots. Want to go home? He Hing saw Chu Qingju walk out and knew she wanted to return to the Fu. He saw Jin and Princess was also present and raised his hands in a greeting. Jin and Princess jested, okay, no need to be so polite in front of me. I'll go first, there's no need to send me off. Jie, take care. Chu Qingju bowed slightly. Jin and Princess returned a bow before she took the hand of her Yahuan as she left, not wanting to be a third wheel. Tian Luoshi naturally wouldn't stand there as well. She spoke a few words to Chu Qingju before leaving as well, leaving behind Chu Qingju, He Hing, and the He Yuan couple. It's still early, Ji and Sao can still stay for a while. He Yuan put his hands behind his back as he offered, otherwise it would be such a waste of this good spring sunlight. The spring will still remain, it's not a matter of wasting it. He Hing held Chu Qingju's hand, Sandi and Sandimei don't have to send us off, we shall make our farewells now. If so, we won't forcefully detain you, take care. He Yuan raised his hands in a fist, a silent Qin Bai Lu bowed as she stood to the side. When she raised her head, she saw that Chu Qingju's hand was held by Duan Wang as they walked away. She suddenly remembered the first time she saw Chu Qingju, it had been at the door to the palace. It had been like this that time, Duan Wang and Chu Qingju's fingers entwined together while she and He Yuan would never walk together. It was only when the figures of the two had disappeared from view that she took her gaze back. Looking at the man 2 steps away from her, she suddenly felt tired. She rubbed her forehead as she expressed, "Wang Yi, I'm slightly tired. I'm going back to Jingyuan to rest." He Yuan expressionlessly nodded. Thinking about what had happened on the banquet, his mood wasn't well and he didn't want to see Qin Bai Lu either. "Go, don't wait for me tonight." Qin Bai Lu smiled coldly. From a long time ago, she didn't wait for him anymore. A man that would never arrive, why should she wait? The news that Duan Wang turned down a beautiful woman was passed around. Many praised the feelings between Duan Wang and Duan Wang Fei. Duan Wang's reputation for some reason dramatically increased among the womenfolk and he became the standard for noble ladies to pick their husbands. Chu Qingju couldn't help but smile as she heard the discussions outside. She listened as Huang Yang and Jin Zhan cleverly acted out the rumors from outside. She couldn't help but tease, "Based on what you tell, I'm not even human. It's all unfounded, but you all believe it like it's the truth. Wang Fei, just let them play, otherwise they'll explode." Mu Jin took a cushion to place behind Chu Qingju to help her sit more comfortably. Rui Wang Fei's expression wasn't good when Wang Fei left this time. "Nubi thinks she is very discontent with you. We are on different sides, no matter what I do, she would be displeased." Chu Qingju thought about Qin Bai Lu's conduct at the banquet. She frowned, speculating, it may be that because of Chu Yusu entering Rui Wang Fu that hatred formed and she hates me by association. Mu Jin heard this and thinking of the road that San Xiaojie picked, she sighed. No one thought that San Xiaojie would do such a thing. Nubi thinks that Rui Wang Fu isn't a good destination. Once she finished, she instantly reacted. She couldn't say those words. She bowed down as she pled, "Nubi was speaking nonsense, please forgive me, Wang Fei. There's no need to stick so closely to the rules," Chu Qingju said, "you have a steady personality. I believe that you just slipped this time." Mu Jin heard Wang Fei's words and her heart became even more alert. She reminded herself to not slip again in the future. It was all right here where no one else was present. If other people were present, wouldn't they say Wang Fei had no discipline? "Wang Fei, Luo Yinyang asks for an audience." Yu Zhan walked in. Seeing Mu Jin Jiejia's expression wasn't right, she lowered her voice to say, "Nubi sees that Luo Yinyang's spirits aren't very good. Just let her come in." Chu Qingju thought for a bit but didn't switch to another place to receive Luo Shi. In a short while, she saw Luo Shi docilely walk in. Luo Yinxiu walked in, and without a word, knelt down. Chu Qingju hurriedly let a servant help her up. "What are you doing, Mu Jin?" Help Luo Yinyang to a seat. Originally, Nubi shouldn't have come like this to visit Wang Fei, but Nubi is really grateful for Wang Fei's kindness. Luo Yinxiu's eyes were red. Nubi has nothing to repay Wang Fei except to do a full greeting to express the gratefulness. To want to support your elders but they are already gone is a huge regret of all people. We are women, we cannot even help support those who raised us. If we cannot even see their last moments, how would we face them in death? Chu Qingju sighed. Even though this era was similar to late Tang in terms of the status of men and women, but it was still the man as the sky, the woman as an accessory of the man. There was a rare strong woman, but they were dependent on the power of the maternal family. It was all right for a princess to not want her Fuma, but were there an empress that dared not want the emperor? Men and women were, in the end, not equal in this world. She stood and patted the back of Luo Yinxiu's hand. Don't think too much right now. Go back and get a good sleep. I understand your desires. She saw the colors that Luo Yinxiu were wearing were very light and plain. She knew that it was out of desire to observe mourning for her Jojo and didn't have any objections. Luo Yinxiu wiped away her tears and stood to bow to her. Nubi thanks Wang Fei. Originally, she had thought Wang Fei was arrogant and wouldn't pay attention to one as useless as her. She hadn't thought that she would help her and speak words of comfort. She was a Shirjie, one that could be easily taken care of. How Wang Fei treated her, it was her good fortune to enter this Wang Fu. If she encountered a woman more dangerous, she wouldn't have been allowed to wear plain clothes, much less return to her uncle's home for the funeral. Coming of the Jingyuan, Luo Yinxiu, with the support of a Yahuan, wiped her tears as she said, Shu Wen, remember Wang Fei's boon today. Even if I cannot repay it all in this lifetime, I have to remember it well. The Yahuan named Shu Wen carefully supported her and observed in a small voice, Mistress, I feel that Wang Fei treats people well, and isn't at all like what Ping Yinyang said. Ping Yinyang is bringing trouble upon herself. Luo Yinxiu's expression had returned to normal. To weep in this kind of place, it was providing amusement for others. As a Chia, how could she ever shake the prestige of the mistress? Luo Yinxiu thought about what Ping Zijin had done in the past. 3 years ago, she entered the palace as a female candidate. Because her status wasn't enough, she was bestowed by Jing Guifei to serve His Highness. His Highness was able to give her a position, she should have treasured it. Now it's like this, she lost even His Highness' affections. She lost more than she had gained. Shu Wen nodded. Looking around at the surrounding and seeing no one was around, she furtively said, Nubi feels that Wang Fei is better looking than Ping Yinyang. Wang Yi liking Wang Fei and not Ping Yinyang is right. What does a young girl like you know? Don't mention this in the future. Luo Yinxiu's face darkened. Let's go, help me change once we return. Yes, Shu Wen embarrassedly lowered her head, not daring to speak. He Hing had returned to the royal court, but when he heard the decree Fu Huang had sent down, he couldn't help frown. Let Lao San take the decree to scold Lao De. What was the meaning of the decree? Hating Lao De for failing to meet expectations, or wanted to let Lao San get some revenge? This conduct was too preposterous. He raised his head to look at Qing the Emperor, stepping forward to raise his hands. Fu Huang, Chen had assumed that since De Ji has already reflected in how you tower already, he knows what he did wrong. Why don't Fu Huang give De Ji a change? Hanger, Lao De tried to assassinate you, why do you beg for mercy for him? Qing the Emperor looked at his second son, his face full of surprise and displeasure. Thinking out the message that Lao De had others send to him where he had explained that he didn't try to assassinate him and there were hints of intentions of ceding to him, He Hing knew that even though Lao De was imprisoned, he was still in a life-or-death battle with Lao San. It's not that Chen has the intentions of asking for mercy for De Ji. But up until now, De Ji had been very reverential of Fu Huang. If Fu Huang scolds him again, Chen is worried that De Ji's body won't hold up. Your eldest grandson has just turned 3 years old, can he be without a father? He Hing's voice was full of earnestness as he persuaded, Fu Huang, can you endure the pain of losing a son? I'm saying you can't bear to let your son die, can you say you can bear it? Evidently Qing the Emperor was very moved by these words. His eldest son would not eat or sleep because of his condemnation. If he really died due to that, he, as a father, would really care. So he nodded and concluded, if that's so, then it would be as you say. There won't be a decree condemning him. Jin will send some more books over to let him read and write to cultivate his moral character. Fu Huang is kind and wise. He Heng's face was moved and reverent as he knelt. He Yuan turned his head to look at the scene. His face darkened as he thought, when would He Heng's mouth be clumsy? The court officials standing at the back also knelt down as they shouted the emperor's benevolence, and caused Qing the emperor to reveal a smile. He praised He Heng, expressing the side of him that was a loving father, before he ended court. After court, He Heng coincidentally managed to be walking together with Minister Luo Changqing. After Luo Changqing made his greetings, He Heng remarked, "After a few more days, it would be your daughter's special day. Ben Wang will give early congratulations to Luo de Ren." Luo Changqing raised his hand and acknowledged, "Wang Yi is too polite, great thanks Wang Yi." This appellation, it even omitted the title at the front. It was much more intimate than before. Hi, ancient drinking game, players toss arrows into a pot and the loser drinks. Chapter 73 The things missed today. Luo Fu was especially busy. Luxurious sedans of all kinds stopped at the doors of the Luo Fu, and the line was so long it took half the street. The common people watched from far away on the side as the sedans that carried the noblewomen passed by and started to discuss the matter of Luo Xiaojia's upcoming marriage. The time at which Chu Qingju arrived wasn't too early or too late. Once her sedan appeared, the other sedans quickly moved out to make a path to let her 8-person Wang Fei-ranked sedan smoothly pass through. Getting off the sedan, the person receiving her was Luo Wenyao's mother Luo Taitai. She reached out to hold Luo Taitai's hand, stopping her from bowing and greeting to her. "Luo Taitai, what are you doing? You are my elder, there's no rationale for elders bowing to their descendants. Today is Wenyao Mimi's day of adding to the dowry. Coming here is me butting in to receive some of that celebratory cheer. Wang Fei could come, it's bringing light to this humble abode, it isn't butting in." Luo Taitai was smiling widely as she supported her hand to walk into the Fu and usher her into the Hoyuan. She saw that many people had already arrived. These people must be on good relations with the Luo family to come at this time to add to the dowry. Tian Luo sure might have been Chu Qingju's Jiomu, but she hadn't expected that her niece would personally come. Seeing her, she fell into a short daze before revealing a smile. The fact that her niece was honoring her maternal family, it was out of fondness for her. "Jiomu," Chu Qingju walked over to Tian Luo. She saw that Tian Luo was holding the accounts for Luo Wenyao's dowry. She casually took a look and said to Luo Taitai behind her, "Luo Taitai loves her daughter very much, this dowry is very generous." The other foreign present, when they heard the words, followed with their compliments. The family attitude of the Luo family in placing importance on the next generation was famous in Jing City. Chu Qingju ruminated on the stuff listed on the dowry list. This desire to care for their daughter, it was very rare. As Luo Taitai heard the praises, she smiled as tears ran down. It could be seen she was happy at her daughter's marriage yet sad to part with her daughter. A short while later, everyone started to demand to see the soon-to-be married bride. Chu Qingju went with the crowd into Luo Wenyao's room. After entering, she saw Luo Wenyao wearing a pink dress, her cheeks red as she sat by the window, clearly embarrassed. Luo Lao Taitai was sitting beside her, a benevolent smile on her face. It seemed that she, as an elder, was discussing something with her beloved granddaughter. Chu Qingju's footsteps paused. She felt that this scene before her was very warm and unconsciously gave a smile, holding Tian Luo's hand as she stood silently at one side. "So beautiful," one foreign looked at Luo Wenyao who had her head lowered, and gasped, "It wasn't so long ago you were just a young Yatu and now you are getting married." She walked in front of Luo Taitai and gently patted her hand, as her aunt, "I don't have anything good to give her, but these things are just a token of my love as an elder." Once she finished, the Yahuan behind her revealed the gifts. Chu Qingju found that inside were 2 pairs of bangles, 2 pairs of earring, 2 buyao, and 2 sets of jade artifacts. The craftsmanship of all these objects were very fine. It seemed that this aunt of Luo Wenyao's had put some thought in. The close relatives of the Luo family started to give out the objects to add to the dowry. Tian Luo Shi, as the aunt, didn't give jade artifacts or jewelry. She straightforwardly gave out the deeds to the land and house for a shop. It was an exceedingly generous gift. Of course, it also implied her position in the Tian family. After the relatives presented, then it was time for the friends. As a Wang Fei, Chu Qingju naturally wouldn't be left until last. She indicated for the Yahuan behind her to present what she had brought. She walked next to Luo Wenyao, gently holding her hand to say, "According to age, you are some months younger than me. It's appropriate for me to call you Mimi." Luo Wenyao's face was crimson as she bowed, "Jijie." Chu Qingju smiled as she touched the other's delicate face. 15 years old, still half a child, and to be married in this ancient time. She suddenly thought about the Gojian destroys Wu. From the previous life's humanities classes, there was a phrase, if a woman is not married by 17, her parents are at fault, which used to be a great target for mockery by everyone. Now that she was living at this place, she knew how real it was. You have to remember, a woman can be virtuous, can be dignified but cannot forget to be good to herself. Chu Qingju slightly lowered her head, and spoke at a volume by Luo Wenyao's ear that only the two of them could hear. Don't assume that, as a Wang Fei, you have to be careful with speech and laughter. Everything else is fake. To have your husband be good to you is the best tactic of all. You have to remember he isn't just a Wang Yi, he is also a man. Speaking to that point, Chu Qingju didn't go any further. She took a step back. Looking at Luo Wenyao's face that was bursting with blood, she couldn't resist touching her face again. Such a good girl, little student Ming better not disappoint her. Luo Wenyao looked at the smiling woman in front of her. For some reason unknown, she put what she had just heard deep into her heart. Even though the two had only met a few times, but she felt what the other said was the truth and the conduct of the other was good. A beat later, she nodded her head gravely. "Jijie, Mimi will remember." In that pair of large eyes were reverence and trust. The others thought that they spoke a few words due to the similar age of the two and that they would be jolie in the future. They definitely wouldn't have thought that Chu Qingju was teaching Luo Wenyao the skills to manage her husband. They looked at the gifts that Duan Wang Fei was adding to the dowry and had to admit to themselves that Duan Wang Fei was one that repaid the kindness done to her. A phoenix blood jade pendant, ruby hair comb, mutton fat bangles, 12 double-sided embroidered silk handkerchiefs, a whole set of pearl hair ornaments, and a dotted jade buyao. Those were all rare objects on their own, and Duan Wang Fei had given so many. It could be seen that she still remembered the kindness of the Luo family from the past. Thinking about that, everyone laughed on the inside at Chang de Gong Fu. Neglecting an eldest daughter. Now this eldest daughter was grown, she was estranged from them. The second daughter that was put on their hearts rushed up to become a chia. This was already a laughingstock in Jing City. They had to wonder, did the people of Chang de Gong Fu have the courage to leave their home? Not long after, even the Princess Royal and some of the Feipin from the palace sent people to add to the dowry. It could be seen that the importance placed on the Luo family, and expressed the fact that after Luo Wenyao married, she wouldn't be slighted by the imperial family. After the guests left, Luo Wenyao sat by the window. Thinking of Chu Qingju's words, her face flushed. She twisted to look at her grandmother that was keeping her company and expressed in a small voice, "Grandmother, Duan Wang Fei is a good person." Luo Lao Tai heard her granddaughter's words and smiled. "Duan Wang Fei might not be a good person, but she hasn't treated you badly. Yao Yatu, you have to remember, tomorrow, you will be marrying into the imperial family. The people good to you might not be good, the people true to you might not be true." Luo Wenyao nodded. She hesitated before commenting. For some reason, from the first time granddaughter met Duan Wang Fei, there was a feeling of closeness. Was granddaughter too impulsive? You usually are calm and steady, grandmother knows that. Luo Lao Tai Tai shook her head. She reached out to straighten the slightly askew biao in her granddaughter's hair. She smiled and replied, in this world, destiny is important. If you feel you can be close friends with someone, then look and think more. In the end, that will tell you if your instincts are right or not. Luo Winyao ruminated before lowering her head, confirming, granddaughter will remember. Even Duan Wang Fei didn't always have smooth sailing. When she had just married, she wasn't favored by Duan Wang. At that time, she had to endure Liang Shi's attitude when she went home, Luo Lao Tai Tai said ruefully, but who knew that after 2 short months, Duan Wang started to be seriously attached to her, and for her, created conflict with Chang de Gongfu. It can be seen that Duan Wang Fei is a very outstanding woman. As she finished listening to her grandmother's words, Luo Wenyao's worship of Chu Qingju became even greater. If a woman like Duan Wang Fei couldn't receive the affections of her husband, then it meant Duan Wang's eyes were too lacking. After finishing adding to Luo Wenyao's dowry and staying in Luo Fu to eat a meal, Chu Qingju sat on the sedan to return to the Fu. From the outside of the sedan came sounds of peddling. She brushed aside the curtain and saw a stall not far away selling stewed eggs. It didn't look extremely clean, but the fragrance drifted into the nose. Stop, as Chu Qingju spoke, the sedan slowly stopped. Wang Fei, Huang Yang walked to the window of the sedan and asked in a small voice, has something happened? Chu Qingju peeked from behind the curtain. I see that the stewed eggs seem fragrant, buy some for a taste. Get the owner to add some of the soup. After returning to the Fu, it has to be heated so the taste will not change. Hearing this, Huang Yang turned his head to look at the stewed egg stall at the side of the street. He jogged in front of the stall and took out a handful of copper, buying a dozen or which were then wrapped with lotus leaves. He held a bowl filled with the stew as he ran back to the side of the sedan, informing in a small voice, Wang Fei, this one has bought them. And, let's return. Chu Qingju rubbed her nose. Even though she wanted to taste one now, due to the need for appearances, she resisted the craving. The old woman that sold the stewed eggs didn't expect that her food would be bought by an important person one day. Her face was full of excitement as she looked at the red and yellow sedan leave, muttering, the heavens, that was a noble. The passers-by saw that even a noble and relative of the imperial family had bought the stewed eggs, and for a time, many bought a few for a taste. This was something that even a noble liked to eat. Not far away, He Yuan sat on a horse as he looked at the stewed egg stall surrounded by people. He frowned as he raised his horse whip to point to the stall. He Fu Air, go buy a few. He Fu Air quickly left with 2 guards. He pushed into the crowd and brought a few stewed eggs before squeezing out of the crowd. Taking them to He Yuan, he warned, Wang Yi, the food on the street isn't clean, don't eat too much. Looking at the unsightly egg, He Yuan used a white handkerchief to hold the already peeled egg. He hesitated before taking a bite. The egg had been cooked for a long time, it was tough and slightly salty, but the smell was very special. What is this? Just throw it away. He Yuan ate a whole egg before wiping his hands and throwing the handkerchief away. He ordered coldly, return to the Fu. He Fu Air blanked. When he raised his head, Wang Yi was already far away on his horse. He turned to carelessly shove the stewed egg wrapped in lotus leaves to one of the children on the street and jogged to catch up. The child that had the egg shoved into his hand stared dazedly at the back of He Fu Air. He unwrapped the egg and took a bite, instantly giving a smile. Tao Popo's stewed eggs were really flavorful, so delicious. That rich person has terrible sense, to pass on something this good. Chapter 74 Jealousy. On the day of Ming's marriage, Chu Qingju and Jean and Princess received the womenfolk who'd arrived for the celebration as the mistresses of the house. Now that Ning Wangfei was under house arrest in Bright Moon Tower, Chu Qingju held seniority among the Wangfei. For this wedding of Ming, her little brother-in-law, even if she wanted to be lazy, she couldn't avoid it. The womenfolk were fine. Order a few cheerful plays, put out some fruit and refreshments and chit-chat. It wasn't very difficult. But it was more complicated on the men's side. It didn't just touch on the personal interests of some, they had to pay attention to people who were drunk and would cause an unfortunate disturbance. Additionally, He Yuan wasn't willing to demean himself by receiving guests, so He Hing and some of the officials of the Ministry of Rites had to organize the guests. Even if it seemed busy, most of those who came were smart. They wouldn't cause a disturbance at this kind of setting, and wouldn't try to find trouble. Most of them respectfully sat down and waited for the wedding to begin. Jean and Princess paid attention to the time. Not long after, a Taijian ran over and reported that the wedding sedan was almost at its destination. A crowd of women stood to walk to the front hall and waited for the couple to bow to the heaven and earth. Chu Qingju and Jean and Princess stood together. She swept a gaze across the hall. The men and women stood at their own sides, the men on the left and women on the right, clearly divided. In a short while, the music sounded. She tilted her head to look and saw Ming wearing the bright red wedding clothes, his hand holding one end of a red silk cord as he walked in from the outside. On the other side of the red silk cord was Luo Wenyao, who was wearing a phoenix crown and cape. While Qing the Emperor and the Empress didn't personally attend, their gifts had been sent down very early beforehand. Chu Qingju watched as the couple bowed to the empty seats above them and once again looked down on the imperial house. The father wasn't present when the son got married. Was there even any meaning left when the imperial father and son were like this? When the three brothers in front of Ming had married, Qing the Emperor had personally written out a celebratory speech to be read at each of the ceremonies, expressing the regret of his absence and wish to make up for such a deficiency. Why wasn't there one when it was Ming's turn? After the ceremony, Chu Qingju and the others followed the newly wedded pair to their bridal rooms and waited for Ming to lift the bride's veil. The bridal rooms were very busy. Chu Qingju even saw Jean and Princess' two children. She watched as Ming slowly lifted the bride's veil. Underneath it, Luo Wenyao's face was full of bashfulness, like a flower just before blooming. Some said that a woman was most beautiful on the day of her marriage. Chu Qingju smiled at the bashful Luo Wenyao and had to admit it was true. She and Jean and Princess smiled as they came forward to say some lucky words. After the children received their red packets, they ushered everyone out and left a silent space for the newlyweds. Coming out of the bridal room, Jean and Princess looked at the darkening sky. She smiled as she reminisced, that year I was married, the Didi were still all children. Now, all of them are married. Chu Qingju guessed that Jean and Princess was thinking of her failed marriage, comforting. Time is like flowing water. Jijia doesn't have to be sad. Listening to the noise from the banquet in front of them, Jean and Princess smiled as she glanced at Chu Qingju. You are assuming that I am sad over what happened with the Count of Beilu. She laughed. Right now, I am the Princess Royal, I have a son and daughter, and they have their titles. What do I need to be sad about? Chu Qingju hadn't thought Jean and Princess would say such unaffected words and stilled before conceding. It's me that was mistaken. Jean and Princess shook her head. When the Count of Beilu betrayed me in the beginning, he should have thought of the conclusion. I am the daughter of the Emperor. He underestimated the people of the imperial family. Maybe it came about because of the imperial family were too courteous to him when they used to return to Jing, and that made him forget what they were truly like. Chu Qingju felt that Jean and Princess was extremely domineering right now. As they walked closer to the wedding banquet, she looked ahead and hesitated before speaking. A few days ago, subordinate of my Wang Yi, came back from Jingzhou. I heard him say that 9th grade official's daughter died from sickness. The Count of Beilu hasn't stepped out of his home and even sent up a request to transfer the title to his deity. Fu Wang will not agree. Jean and Princess smiled as she explained, this title, until the Count of Beilu dies, will always be on his head. But after he dies, it isn't certain that this title will still be the Chao family's. Chu Qingju looked at the smile on Jean and Princess' face, instantly feeling reverence. This was what a true woman should be like. At the wedding banquet, He Hing occasionally drank a cup with the guest, but most of the time, he only had to sit to one side and wait for others to come to him. Looking at the noisy play on stage, he gave a yawn of disinterest. Ge is tired. Sitting by his side, He Yuan played with the wine cup, looking lazy. Now that Lao Sai has married, he will get busy in the future. He Hing didn't seem to hear the implication in his words. He raised the wine cup and swirled the contents. With a Wang Fei to care for him, Sid will have more relaxing days. Ha, He Yuan snorted, when did Ge become so simple? Didi finds it very unexpected. He Heng was pretending not to understand his words, still acting in front of him. He Heng gave a warm smile as he responded, Ge is always like this. It was Sandy who didn't know before today. The corner of He Yuan's lips jerked. He turned his head to avoid looking at He Heng's expression and saw his eldest sister and Duan Wang Fei emerge from the back and walk to the female side. He frowned as his gaze landed on Qin Bailu, who had been seated the whole time. The hand which held the wine cup tightened. They were both Wang Fei, but why was the difference in conduct so large? The noise eventually had to quiet down. When Chu Qingju and He Hing came out of Qing Wang Fu, it was already the deep of the night. She inhaled, watching as the guard surrounded Jean and Princess as she left, before she said, we can finally return and rest. He Hing helped tie her cloak, let's go back. Ge and saw, take care. Chu Qingju turned her head and saw He Yuan and Qin Bailu walking together with a stride length between them. Qin Bailu's expression didn't seem right. San Shu, San Daimai, Chu Qingju smiled, it's late, you two should return and rest too. Thanks for the concern, Saw. Of course we know to rest, Qin Bailu calmly said, today, Saw was very busy, don't exhaust yourself. It was easy to detect the queerness in her tone. He Heng's brows furrowed slightly, his eyes instantly becoming cold. Even the smile on his lips disappeared without a trace. It was only the fact that the other was his daimai that he didn't speak. Shut up, He Yuan snapped, if you're tired, then go to the carriage and rest. Qin Bailu's expression changed as she coldly answered, if that's the case, Chia will leave first. Wang Yi can do as he pleases. She really did abandon He Yuan to leave first, and didn't even care that He Heng was present. Chu Qingju felt that Qin Bailu painted a gigantic black dot on the reputation of the Qin family as an educated and noble family. And this stain couldn't be washed out, and couldn't be brushed off. He Yuan's face was so dark, ink could be squeezed out of it. He managed to raise his hands to the two and state, Ge, Saw, you go first. He said to Chu Qingju, Saw, forgive me for the wife's ill manners, and for letting you see such a joke. This wasn't the first time I've seen your embarrassments. Chu Qingju smiled calmly as she replied, it might be that Daimai isn't feeling well. San Shu should go take a look. We don't live very far from here and can get back to the Fu very quickly. You go first. He Yuan nodded, goodbye. Chu Qingju reached out to hug He Heng's arm, whispering in his ear, our San Daimai's temper isn't soft at all. He Heng smiled coldly, wrapping an arm around her waist to enter the carriage before declaring, the Qin family raised a good daughter. Chu Qingju listened to the tone of his voice and had the impression of it expressing, wait and see. She smiled, who cares whose daughter she is? It has nothing to do with us. He embraced the other in his arms, gently patting her back. A long time later, he stated, don't worry. In the future, no one would dare to be disrespectful to you. The person in his embrace didn't speak. A beat later, he lowered his head to look but only saw the other's sleeping visage. He smiled helplessly. It seemed that today had exhausted her. Clang! A blue ink porcelain teapot smashed onto the floor. He Yuan angrily pointed at Qin Bailu, look at what you've done. How does it look like anything a proper lady would do? Even an uneducated shrew would be better. Ben Wang gets angry just looking at you. Who do you not get angry looking at? Lu He and the Dong Yuan, Qing Lu, or that whore in Shi Yuan. The women of the Chu family are all fox spirits, but you men stop moving after taking a look. He Yuan dealt a blow to Qin Bailu's face, making her stagger. He expressionlessly looked at Qin Bailu, who was covering her face. Before saying this, think of your position. If you feel that you can't stay in my Rui Wang Fu any longer, then get out and stay in your paternal home for the rest of your life. Don't come here to be an eyesore. Qin Bailu covered her face. That slap had been extremely heavy. She still felt her ears ringing. She raised her head to look at He Yuan. From the other's handsome face, other than dislike for her, she couldn't see anything else. She looked dazedly at the man, her tears streaming. The Qin family is an educated and noble family. Don't stain the Qin family's reputation. My Delong dynasty has had Wang Yi in the past who divorced their wives. If you don't accept, you could try. He Yuan took out a handkerchief to wipe his hands in disgust. He turned and left the room, not looking once at Qin Bailu. It didn't matter how noble the Xiaojia of the Qin family were. He was an imperial son, a Wang Yi. If she married him, she had to obey his rules. If she couldn't obey, then get out. Wang Fei, seeing that Wang Yi had left, the Yuan who served Qin Bailu hurriedly supported her to a seat. She got others to bring a towel and medicine. The Jing Yuan quickly descended into chaos. Qin Bailu was crying and laughing. I can't even scold that Chu family whore. Just a Cheshire, but Wang Yi treats me like so for her. That whore has good tricks. Wang Fei, why do this? Ru Hua, one of the Yuan who was part of Qin Bailu's dowry, had reddened eyes as she helped put on medicine for Qin Bailu. No matter how Chu-sure is, she's just a Chia. Why be hostile against Wang Yi for her? Qin Bailu woodenly looked at the darkness outside the door. Come say, which part of Chu Qingju is stronger than me? Do men really place such importance on a woman's face? Ru Hua asked in confusion. Wang Fei, why are you mentioning Duan Wang Fei? Why is it that I can't receive what she can get? Qin Bailu still remembered the rumors before the marriage decree. At that time, there were people saying that the emperor wanted to marry Chu Qingju to Wang Yi and her to Duan Wang. However, the decision had been changed at the last minute for some reason. She had rejoiced that she was engaged to Rui Wang because Rui Wang was more favored by the emperor than Duan Wang. And 2 years ago, she'd seen Rui Wang in the palace once. She had silently given her heart away. Ru Hua didn't understand why her Wang Fei would have that kind of idea. After she applied the medicine, she carefully said, how Duan Wang Fei lives, only she knows. What we usually see might only be intentional. Wang Fei, you have no need to compete with Duan Wang Fei. You have to know that, other than a face, she is less than you in every other aspect. Qin Bailu listened to her words and suddenly laughed. Yes, I want to see just how long she can be proud. She wasn't living well and so she couldn't bear to see people who were lesser than her have better lives. Chapter 75 Intelligence determines taste. The morning after Qing Wang's wedding day, he took his wife to the palace for the formal greeting. The emperor might have been indifferent to his youngest son, but on the surface, he didn't slight him. What should have been bestowed down was given. The empress didn't discriminate. What her attitude was when the previous 3 imperial sons had married, that was her attitude towards He Ming's marriage. But she seemed to be friendly towards Luo Wenyao. Coming out of Kuei Yuan Palace, Luo Wenyao's face was slightly red as she walked next to He Ming with her head down. Even though she had dreamed of her husband as one who was well educated and skilled in both martial and literary arts, in reality, she felt that Qing Wang treated her better and was more steadfast than the one in her dreams. Nothing would be better than to have a place in his heart. Don't worry, Mu Fei is very friendly, she will definitely like you. He Ming saw his wife's nervousness and gripped her hand reassuringly. Don't be afraid. I'll be there with you. Luo Wenyao gave the smallest of nods, her face blushing harder. And Gui Pin really did like having Luo Wenyao as her Erxi very much. She had a warm personality and a good conduct. The emperor might have neglected her child for so many years, but thankfully the Erxifu he had chosen was a good one. She looked at her Erxifu whose face was full of embarrassment and indicated for the palace maid beside her to take out the prepared gifts. She gently grasped Luo Wenyao's hand, smiling as she spoke. Today, I'm putting Ming'er into your care. In the future, if Ming'er does something wrong, don't let him off. Tell me and I will certainly sort him out. Mu Fei is abandoning your son since you have an Erxifu. He Ming stood and raised his hands in a fist. Mu Fei, don't worry. We will try to live a good life. Seeing the situation, Luo Wenyao perceptively stood and followed in bowing. Her face might have been bashful but her tone was resolute. Don't worry Mu Fei. Erxi will definitely take good care of His Highness and have a good life. And Guipin's eyes slightly reddened. She put the 2 people's hands together, and said happily, it's good to try to have a fulfilling life. A person's life is like a long road. It's a fortunate thing to have someone to walk with along this long road. You have to treasure it. He Ming turned to look at his wife. The hand that held Luo Wenyao's hand tightened as he nodded gravely. The couple led in Guipin's residence and started to head slowly out of the palace. He Ming noticed that Luo Wenyao kept walking half a step behind him and reached out to grab her hand, remarking, when we get back, we should go to see to the gifts prepared for the return to your paternal home and check to see if there's anything lacking. Luo Wenyao shook her head and replied in a small voice, Your Highness has already prepared everything. How could there be anything wrong? I don't know what father and mother-in-law like, so you have to take a look. He Ming smiled as he responded, otherwise, what will happen if father and mother-in-law aren't satisfied with their son-in-law? Luo Wenyao heard his words and her hand that was being held by He Ming gripped his broad hand. She smiled as she teased, that's even more of a reason not to help you. If you prepare, it's called being thoughtful. What is it if I prepare it? The 2 smiled simultaneously, their hearts gradually becoming closer. Chu Qingju stood at the side of the fake mountain, looking at the sweet young couple not far away. She couldn't resist smiling and remarked to Mu Jin beside her, those 2 are pretty good like this. Mu Jin smiled as she responded, Wang Fei likes Qing Wang Fei very much. I like all the good Gunyang. Chu Qingju slowly headed towards Zhongjing Palace. Looking at Mu Jin's confused expression, she smiled and explained, a young Gunyang, she's more beautiful than the most beautiful flower. A woman's whole life depends on one man, but that one man might not only have her as his only woman. Society is like this. A woman's beauty might be very short, or very long, but the only thing in common is that they had all been beautiful. It's just that they've all met different men and had different fates. Mu Jin didn't think that Wang Fei would say such a complicated speech. She mused, so it's good for Nubi to accompany Wang Fei. Many of the men in this world are fickle, and Nubi won't like them. Chu Qingju felt that Mu Jin was affected by the Duke of Changde's actions and the body's original owner's mother. She helplessly patted the back of Mu Jin's hand. I won't force you to do something you're not willing to. But if you meet someone you've fallen in love with in the future, you have to tell me. Mu Jing smiled as she acquiesced, but she didn't put it on her mind. The kind of being that was man, it couldn't even be compared to a handkerchief. At least a handkerchief was useful for wiping things. Men, other than being fickle and emotional, what else could they do? When they had reached Zhongjing Palace, Ding Mama received Chu Qingju and ushered her inside. Only when she had entered did she realize that, aside from Jing Guifei, Wen Guipin was also present. She went forward to give a greeting to Jing Guifei first before greeting Wen Guipin. Duan Wang Fei has no need to be so courteous. Wen Guipin hurriedly stood to return half a greeting. Her face was still fragile, but her mental state seemed much better than last time at the gates of Tianqi Palace. Mimi, sit down. Hinger's wife, sit down too. Jing Guifei smiled and let the two sit, motioning for a palace maid to serve the pastries her Erxi liked. Why did you think of coming here today? Chu Qingju smiled as she looked at the pastries the palace maid served. She gushed to Jing Guifei, Mufei is so good to Erxi, I like eating all of these. She reached out to pop one in her mouth, joyfully swallowing before replying, because of Sid's wedding these past days, Erxi didn't have the time to enter the palace to greet Mufei. One of my Taijian managed to find a few jars of peach wine. I had a taste and found that the wine was light and sweet, perfect for women, so I brought some along to let Mufei have a taste. The stuff of the common people might not be as fine as those of the palace, but the taste is unique. Just a few jars of wine, fancy that. You had to send it in. Jing Guifei's tone was reproachful, but the smile on her face became more evident. Such a child, people will laugh at you. When Guipin, who was sitting to one side, heard those words and interjected, Guifei Nyang's words will harm this child's heart. Look how filial this child is. She remembers you whenever she gets something and brings it to you. Nyang, what are you unsatisfied with? You don't know her. Today, it's 2 jars of wine, tomorrow it's a few boxes of food, the day after it's some novels. It's all just petty amusements, but she treats them like treasures. Jing Guifei's face was helpless. It's lucky that it's you here today. If it was anyone else, wouldn't it be a laughingstock if it got out? Chu Qingju saw that after Jing Guifei said those words, Wen Guipin seemed to release a breath. She couldn't help but think Wen Guipin was siding with Jing Guifei. Was it that Ning Wang was wagering on the second he? It's the thought that counts. Gifiniangning shouldn't disdain her efforts. When Guipin smiled as she looked at the docilely seated Chu Qingju, based on what Pin Chia sees, this is a very rare and good Erxi. Jing Guifei smiled as she pointed at Chu Qingju, ordering, why aren't you thanking your Wen Mu Fei for saying good things on your behalf? You have to pour tea for her later. Chu Qingju smiled as she stood to bow to Wen Guipin. Many thanks to Wen Mu Fei. Wen Guipin waved her hand repeatedly as she said she couldn't accept it. She was very courteous in her treatment of Chu Qingju. Jing Guifei smiled as she watched her Erxi personally pour a cup of tea for Wen Guipin. Then she naturally helped switch her own cup as well. The mirth in her eyes became even more evident. Chu Qingju ate the noon meal at Jing Guifei's palace before leaving. She walked on the black stone paths of the palace and thought about Wen Guipin flattering Jing Guifei. She couldn't help but sigh. In the past, Wen Guipin might have been warm and courteous, but she wasn't at this level. This was all for her son. Wang Fei, it seems that Shu Guifei is coming up front, Mu Jin informed in a small voice as she looked at the procession coming towards them. Chu Qingju raised her head to look ahead. On the other side, walking in front of numerous palace maids and Taijian, was Shu Guifei. She moved sideways to retreat to the side of the road. When Shu Guifei drew near, she bowed and greeted, "Greetings to Shu Guifei. Isn't this Lauer's wife?" Shu Guifei stopped in her steps. She raised an eyebrow as she looked at Chu Qingju, who had her head slightly lowered. She said in a sarcastic voice, "After just a few days, Lauer's wife has become even more beautiful." "Thanks, Nyang Nyang, for the compliment." Chu Qingju faintly smiled as she gave another bow. Shu Guifei looked coldly at the woman in front of her. Her looks truly were better than her own Erxifu. No wonder she could tempt Lauer to not walk when he saw her. Thinking that this was her enemy's Erxifu, her tone was icy. But a woman's appearance is not the most important. As a wife, a virtue is the most important of them all. Even Jing Guifei hadn't said anything, so how could Shu Guifei act as though she was her popo? Chu Qingju raised her head to glance at Shu Guifei, her voice soft as she responded, "Qingju only has a fleeting beauty and can't measure up to the word beautiful. Gifiniangning's appearance rivals that of the goddesses. If Qingju could even have a fraction, it would be the greatest fortune in this life." Shu Guifei's face darkened. Those words were complimenting her for being beautiful on the surface, but its true purpose was to block the words she had said previously. She was going to flare up when she heard another person's voice come from behind her. "Greetings to Shu Guifei." He had a slight smile as he walked in front of Chu Qingju, his voice reproachful as he said, "You went to bother Mufei for the noon meal again. Mufei cares for me, and knows that I like to eat the food at her place, so she specially let me stay back to eat." Chu Qingju snorted, "Just right now, Mufei said I was filial. How can you say that I was bothering her?" "Fine, Mufei always protects you." He raised his hands helplessly to Shu Guifei, "Mufei is partial to my wife. We have let Shu Guifei see a joke." Shu Guifei's smile had already disappeared. These two's words inside and out were implying that they were Jing Guifei's son and Erxi, and thus, she didn't have the qualifications to lecture them. A long time later, she suppressed the anger inside before she spoke. "Duan Wang exaggerates." He smiled insincerely as he replied, "Shu Gifiniangning is magnanimous. If that is the case, then you should leave the palace early. Ben Gong still has to go to Tianqi Palace, and won't keep you." Shu Guifei's hand, that was supported by a palace maid, tightened. That whore Wei Shi's son, he was just as horrid as Wei Shi. After Shu Guifei was far away, Chu Qingju came to a realization. So this was the type that Qing the Emperor liked. This Shu Guifei could be favored for so many years. It could be inferred that her ancestors must have been generous and virtuous people. "What are you thinking?" He saw Chu Qingju look as though she had an epiphany, and couldn't help asking. "Nothing, I just suddenly felt that intelligence could determine a person's taste." /N. Chapter 76 Truth and Falsehood. After Qing Wang's wedding, the bustling and rumbling Jing city slowly calmed down. It seemed that no one remembered the imprisonment of the eldest imperial son in Bright Moon Tower, nor did they recall the imperial censor who'd rammed himself into a pillar in the court hall. The people who lived in Jing City were the most pragmatic. They would only remember what they should. What they should forget, they definitely wouldn't even remember a hint. Just as everyone was peacefully living their lives, news came out of the palace. The emperor was sick. Shu Guifei and Jing Guifei spent day and night looking after the emperor, but there were still no signs of recovery. Shu Guifei even had a professor of the imperial hospital beaten to death. The emperor was sick, and it was serious. This matter was a sign in Jing. If Shu Guifei had not ordered the death of the imperial hospital's professor, the news wouldn't have been revealed so early. Upon hearing the news, every family's immediate thoughts were different. All the senior officials who were held in the emperor's confidence, such as Tian Jin-ku, had shut their doors and rejected all who came. There were many who tried to find information from Duan Wangfu. Excluding Chu Qingju's family, even the paternal families of Feng Zijin, Jiang Yongyu, and the others had eavesdroppers. These people didn't think it through. What would the paternal family of a Chia of a Wangfu know? Did they really believe that Duan Wang was an idiot, and would tell such things to a Chia, and in this sensitive time, allow the Chia to pass crucial information to her paternal family? The ones who could only beseech the paternal families of the Chia clearly didn't have any great abilities. It was also clear that their brains weren't any good. They wouldn't be able to climb up any higher in their lifetimes unless the heavens willed it. Chu Qingju listened to Jiang Yongyu report that people had come to seek information from her paternal family and let her sit down below her. My father isn't experienced, and doesn't know anything about this kind of a great matter. He could only decline all of them. Jiang Yongyu presented the letter in her hand to Chu Qingju. This is a list of those who came to visit. My father is timid and took down the names of the people as well as the gifts they have sent. Please have a look, Wang Fei. Chu Qingju took the letter and placed it to one side. She didn't even look at the contents of the letter. She smiled at Jiang Yongyu as she promised, this must have been bothersome for your parent. I will definitely speak of this matter to Wang Yi. In Chu Qingju's eyes, Jiang Yongyu was the one who saw the situation most clearly in He Heng's Chisher. She was also the one who had the greatest abilities. She even felt pity for Jiang Yongyu. If Jiang Yongyu hadn't been selected as a female candidate to enter the palace, she would have had good life, marrying a son of a normal rich family as a wife. Jiang Yongyu wasn't surprised that Wang Fei didn't read that letter. Based on Wang Fei's personality and conduct, she definitely wouldn't look at such things. This was Wang Fei's intelligence at work. Nubi's needlework is not yet finished, so I will not disturb Wang Fei any further. Farewell. She had said what she had needed to say. Jiang Yongyu didn't want to rely on Wang Fei to gain Wang Ye's favors. She knew very well now her looks had no chance of being liked by Wang Yi. It was better to walk behind Wang Fei at her tempo. She would have much easier days. Chu Qingju didn't detain her, nodding her head and letting Mu Jing to personally send her out. Jiang Yongyu came out of the door of the room, and thanked Mu Jing repeatedly in order to reject her escort. In the end, Mu Jing still saw her off to the gate of Jingyuan before turning and leaving. Ai Lu supported Jiang Yongyu as they carefully descended the stairs. She turned back to look at the decreasing figure of Mu Jing, and commented in a small voice, Mistress, Wang Fei let the most trusted Mu Jing Gunyang to see you off. It shows that Wang Fei puts importance on you. Jiang Yongyu didn't speak. Not long after, she saw Wang Yi walking towards her from another direction. Her steps paused and she lowered her head to bow in greeting to Wang Yi. He Heng noticed that she was coming from the direction of Zheng Yuang and asked, has Wang Fei not had her noon nap? Wang Fei has risen just now, Jiang Yongyu obediently answered. And He Heng nodded and proceeded to walk in the direction of Jingyuan, not even looking twice at Jiang Yongyu. Jiang Yongyu straightened her body and raised her head to look at the back of He Heng. She suddenly thought, now that the emperor was seriously ill, if Wang Yi. She shook her head. No matter what, she had to respect and honor Wang Fei. She could see this Wang Fu very clearly. It had been, from very early on, grabbed by Wang Fei. Even if other women entered the Fu in the future, they would just be Wang Ye's playthings. Wang Ye's love towards Wang Fei wasn't a pretense. He Heng carelessly flipped through the list in his hand. Seeing Chu Qingju was tormenting the bonsai again, he remarked, these people are unimportant. Some were subordinates of Lao San who'd come to fish. The people of the Jiang family are very sensible. Chu Qingju was carefully trimming out a rabbit's ear. Hearing He Heng's words, her hands stilled. She hadn't thought He Heng would mention what was occurring outside to her. Was it that he really thought of her as one of his people, so he didn't even disguise his words? Does Wang Yi mean that San Shu has secretly done something? She put down the scissors. After washing her hands, she said, Wang Yi, how about I tell you a folk tale? What tale? He Heng saw Chu Qingju's expression was solemn and waved his hand to let the all servants leave the room. He smiled as he urged, let me hear it. An old man had 2 sons in his family. The old man was partial to his youngest son and always wanted to give the good things to his younger son. Afterwards, when the old man was seriously ill, the younger son assumed that the old man would leave behind the family property to him. One day, the younger son heard a neighbor say that his father secretly gave the good things to his brother. The younger son was angry and went to argue with his father. Who knew that he managed to cause the old man to die? The younger son was very regretful. A while later, he finally found out that what the neighbor said was a lie, but the deceased was already gone and regret was useless. Chu Qingju gave a sigh. Don't you think that this younger son harmed himself? It isn't a good thing to believe what others say. He Heng smiled and replied, I've actually heard this story before. Qingju and I really are 2 hearts linked as one. Chu Qingju smiled and talked about some other matters with him before he hurriedly left. She knew inside that what He Heng wanted wasn't her idea but her attitude. This man had ambitions, but he didn't want the person in his bed to not have the same stance as him. But he was very satisfied with her as the person in his bed, so he had said what he did to try to feel her out. She hadn't been here for 1 year, but she now understood what was power, and the magnitude of power. With power, a woman could divorce her husband. Without power, one had to kowtow and bow to another. She looked at the letter He Heng had left behind. Chu Qingju reached out to take a look and slowly folded the list, handing it to Mu Jin and told her to carefully hide it away. Mu Jin looked worriedly at her. By now, Jing City was a mess and it was unknown what could happen. Wang Fei. There's no need to worry. Tell the others to proceed normally, but if there is anyone who dares to talk nonsense, throw them all out of the fu. No one is to be spared. Chu Qingju commanded with a calm face, the Chiesher and the Fu cannot pass messages to the outside. If anyone disobeys, report it to me. Yes, Mu Jin saw Wang Fei seem to be confident and slowly lowered her heart back to its place. Nyang Nyang, a palace maid frantically ran in front of Shu Guifei. Seeing that everyone in the room was a confidant of Shu Guifei, she spoke. Nubi just managed to get some news from Xiao Dazi in Tian Qi Palace. Today, when it was Jing Gefiniangning's turn at care, the emperor praised Duan Wang in front of many people. Shu Guifei had been lying on the recliner since she was massaged by a maid. She instantly sat up when she heard the report, her expression changing as she demanded, "The emperor is awake." What did he say? The palace maid knelt down with some fear, replying, Nubi heard that the emperor praised Duan Wang for his conduct, and generosity for being similar to Xiandi. Xiandi. Shu Guifei furrowed her brow. Xiandi had been considered a wise ruler by many. The emperor deeply respected Xiandi and had always exclaimed that he himself wasn't a wise ruler in comparison, and that if Xiandi didn't have him as the only son, he most definitely wouldn't have succeeded the throne. She had heard it many times. Shu Guifei understood the position Xiandi held in the emperor's heart. Now that the emperor was comparing Duan Wang to Xiandi, what did it mean? That year Yuan'er was born, didn't the emperor say that Yuan'er's brows were similar to that of Xiandi? Why was he now praising that Horweisher's son? Go summon His Highness Rui Wang to the palace. Say that Ben Gong is sick from exhaustion due to constant attendance and let Rui Wang do his filial duty at the emperor's bed. The Yuan, who was still kneeling on the floor, hesitated but then eventually, silently retreated. At this time, Nyang was telling the outside that she was ill due to exhaustion from attendance. Wouldn't the others assume that she wasn't willing to constantly attend the emperor? But then again, she was just a low-ranking palace maid. Guifei certainly wouldn't appreciate someone like her voicing an objection. Furthermore, the emperor had always favored Guifei, so it probably wasn't a major matter. In Tianqi Palace, Qing the emperor woke up from his dreams. Smelling the faint scent of medicine in the room, he fell into a short daze. When he looked outside his canopy, he could only see an indistinct figure sitting outside. She must have been keeping watch over him all this time. His heart warmed and he couldn't resist speaking. "Beloved Fei, why haven't you gone to rest yet? Emperor, you are awake." The canopy was raised and Jing Guifei's tearful yet joyful face appeared in his vision. He suddenly understood. The person who'd been keeping watch was Jing Guifei, not Shu Guifei. In an instant, he was slightly afraid. 23 years ago, when he had fainted due to illness, who had been the one crying by his ear? "Emperor, what is it? Are you not comfortable?" Jing Guifei's face was full of fear. She turned to let the servants call for the Tai who were keeping guard outside before kneeling by his bed and sobbing, "Emperor, you really scared Chia. If you really had something wrong, where would that leave Chia?" "It's not that serious," Qing the emperor coughed. He reached out to pat the arm she had on the bed. "Henger is already grown up. Why are you still crying like this?" "It's that since Henger has grown up, Chia has nothing to worry about." "But if you Chia would have no meaning in life." Jing Guifei saw the Tai had come in and stood as she wiped the tears running down her face. She feigned dignity as she ordered, "Take care in diagnosing the emperor's pulse. If you don't take care, your fate will be the same as the Tai who was beaten to death by Shu Guifei." "Nyang, please don't worry." The Tai bowed to Qing the emperor before reaching out to feel his pulse. A long time later, he slowly released a breath. "Now that emperor has wakened, it's more than half the road to recovery." But there was too much anger in the recent past which caused the body to weaken. Additionally, the state affairs have increased exhaustion, allowing illness. A short period of rest is all that's needed. "You are telling the truth." Jing Guifei didn't care that the Tai was still present as she sobbed. Smiling as she gasped, "Thank the heavens and earth, thank the heavens and earth." The Tai looked at this scene and felt deeply moved. Didn't they say that Shu Guifei was more favored than Jing Guifei? But why was it that Jing Guifei was the one who had kept watch over the emperor, and would cry from sheer joy due to the emperor's body taking a good turn? Thinking to there, he couldn't help but shake his head inside. The emperor didn't cherish the woman who had a true affection for him, but favored that tyrannical Shu Guifei. The emperor had really wasted Jing Guifei's affections. "Quick, write out a prescription for the emperor," Jing Guifei ordered as she wiped her tears. "After the emperor recovers, Ben Gong will reward you greatly." After the Tai left, Jing Guifei took a bowl of porridge from a palace maid and served half a bowl to Qing the emperor. Seeing that Qing the emperor's complexion had improved, she remarked, "Seeing emperor like this, Chia is reminded of 23 years ago. That time, Chia was kneeling at your bed, and was sobbing and begging the heavens at the same time. Chia endured until fainting but didn't see you awaken. She grimaced, but now that Chia has finally seen you awake personally, it truly is the heaven's blessing. 23 years ago, you..." Qing the emperor's expression changed. He looked at Jing Guifei's fragile complexion. A beat later, he gave a long sigh, holding her hand as he observed, "Shen sees that you are exhausted, go to the side room and rest for a bit. But do as you are told. If you are still worried about Shen will let someone wake you after 4 hours. This is Shen's decree." Qing the emperor's voice was resolute. Jing Guifei could only helplessly stand and walk out of the main hall. Only when she had lied down in the side hall did a sliver of a smile reveal itself on her lips. Shu Guifei, that good sister of hers, always left these kind of opportunities for her. They made her felt that if she didn't take advantage of those opportunities, it was letting down her good sister. 23 years ago. At that time, the seriously ill emperor didn't have any brothers, only distantly related cousins. She, along with the other Fapine who didn't have children, who hadn't been crying to the heavens to not take the emperor's life. In the main hall of Tianqi Palace, Qing the emperor stared in a daze as he lay on the bed before he asked a Taijin standing in the corner, "Where is Shu Guifei?" "Emperor, last night, after Shu Guifei attended to you, she caught a cold. At midnight, she was supported by the palace maids back to her palace to rest and recover from her illness." The person speaking was the chief steward of the Taijian. He informed in a small voice, "This morning, a servant came to report. They said that Shu Guifei Nyang was exhausted and most likely will become weakened if she doesn't rest and recover." Then when did Jing Guifei Nyang start to attend Jin? Qing the emperor's expression was slightly cold. Jing Guifei Nyang was in attendance starting from when she had heard you fainted. The chief Taijian peeked at the emperor's expression and carefully continued, "This morning, Jing Guifei Nyang fainted once from exhaustion, but Nyang wasn't willing to leave. Nukai didn't dare to persuade too strongly, so Nyang hadn't closed her eyes for 2 complete days. And Jin knows now." Qing the emperor closed his eyes. Just when the chief Taijian thought he had fell asleep, he once again spoke, "Let the imperial kitchen simmer the lily yam pigeon soup for Jing Guifei. Jin remembers that she likes this one." The chief Taijian hurriedly confirmed before retreating. After he came out of the door to the main hall, he looked at the horizon dyed red by the setting sun. This sky was most likely going to change. In the quiet main hall, Qing the emperor let out a sigh. Had he been wrong all these years? Previous emperor /N. Chapter 77. When He Hing brought Chu Qingju to Tianqi Palace, the children of the emperor along with their mothers were all present. Chu Qingju even saw some unfamiliar princesses and their fuma, but these people were evidently not valued by Qing the emperor and silently stood to one side. The person sitting next to the dragon bed was none other than Jing Guifei. She saw her son and Erxi come in but didn't pay any attention to them and persisted in her efforts to feed Qing the emperor his entire medicine before announcing, "Emperor, Hinger and Erxi have arrived." Qing the emperor's mental state was much better compared to when he had first woke up yesterday. He watched as his son and Erxi bowed in greeting before waving his hand, "Stand up, no need for such protocol." He indicated for a Taijian to bring a bench for the two to sit. Chu Qingju detected that the smile Qing the emperor directed towards Jing Guifei was especially warm, and his eyes, as he looked at He Hing, was kinder than in the past. She strangely felt her back turning cold. He was only sick for a few days, but why did Qing the emperor seem strange? She looked at the still-standing Fapine and princesses, and saw He Hing pulling his stool closer to sit next to the bed. She followed to sit next to He Hing and watched obediently as Jing Guifei warmly placed a cushion for Qing the emperor and gently put a blanket over Qing the emperor, as though, in the eyes of Jing Guifei, Qing the emperor was a more important existence than her own son. Her eyebrows slightly twitched. Chu Qingju felt that she thought something she shouldn't have. She silently moved her gaze to He Hing and saw He Hing appeared to be deeply worried as he looked at Qing the emperor. She also adjusted her expression and tried not to get left behind. Has Fu Wang gotten better? A few days ago, Chen heard Fu Wang's body wasn't well and felt so worried. Chen waited at Tianqi Palace many times but didn't see you awaken. Today, your state looks much better and this son can finally be at ease. He Hing's expression slightly relaxed as he examined Qing the emperor's complexion before saying, this son was unfilial for not being in attendance the entire time that Fu Huang was ill. You are an adult now, and there are many affairs at court. You can't keep watch over Jin all the time. Qing the Emperor smiled and glanced at Jin Guifei. Your Mu Fei has taken very good care of Jin. Jin understands your filial piety. Chu Qingju raised her eyelids to look at Jin Guifei but only saw a faint smile on the other's face. These last few days, Jin Guifei didn't have it easy. The Empress who had been silent all this time spoke. She came forward and stood next to the bed. He Hing and Chu Qingju stood to move to one side. There wasn't any reason for them to remain seated when the Empress was standing. Emperor, after you recover, you have to greatly reward Jin Guifei. The last 2 days, Xia tried many times to get her to rest, but she couldn't bear to part from you. When the Empress spoke to there, she gave a helpless sigh at Jin Guifei. After just a few short days, she's thinned a whole circle. Not just you, Emperor. Even I feel pain looking at her. Qing the Emperor nodded. Her regard, Jin knows. The Empress smiled, not a hint of jealousy on her face. From what Chu Qingju saw, the Empress was very satisfied with the present situation. That made her suspect that the Empress might be on the same side as her popo. Emperor, Shu Guifei and His Highness Rui Wang are asking for an audience. The chief Taijian came in and after seeing the relaxed mood inside the room, he informed in a small voice, His Highness Qing Wang and Chang Wang Fei are also waiting outside the hall to be summoned. She didn't know what Qing the Emperor seemed to be thinking given his brow had slightly furrowed. Let them all come in. Looking at his true love and his most favored son come in. What was Qing the Emperor's expression? Why was Jin Guifei smiling so warmly and the Empress's smile so cold? This situation seemed fishy. Shu Guifei took her son and Erxi with her as she walked in the front and He Ming and Luo Wenyao walking behind them. After the 5 performed their greetings, Qing the Emperor didn't bestow any of them a seat and only asked Shu Guifei, Jin heard you became ill from attending on Jin. Are you better? The rims of Shu Guifei's eyes were slightly red as she walked to the bed, sobbing as she choked out, Xia is fine. Everything became fine when Emperor woke up. It is Xia's body that's useless. Otherwise, Xia would have kept constant guard and served Emperor. Jin Guifei has taken very good care of Jin. It wasn't a hindrance when you weren't present, Qing the Emperor faintly returned. He looked at his favored son and the He Ming couple, coughing a few times before stating, Jin isn't in any serious danger, you don't have to worry. He Yuan was reminded of what Mu Fei had said to him and saw Fu Huang looked very close to Jin Guifei. He felt discontented inside but on the surface, he had to smile as he replied, seeing Fu Huang is well, Qin can rest the heart. And, Qing the Emperor nodded. Seeing the room was full of people, he let the other Feipin, princesses, and Fuma all leave. When only a few were left, he said, this illness of Jin this time, it made you all worry. Everyone replied that as long as nothing was wrong with the Emperor, that was the best, and now the Emperor had to take care of his body and so on. Now that you have all grown up and settled down, Jin is very content, Qing the Emperor sighed, his gaze sweeping across his 3 sons and their Wang Fei behind them. He gave a few more harsh coughs, Jin is growing old. You all have to put more effort into state matters and help lighten the load for Jin. The 3 He brothers instantly agreed, and said they would be willing to die for Fu Huang and so forth. Shu Guifei's heart became more and more insecure. Why was the Emperor saying these things? Didn't he favor Yuan the most? Why did it seem he was treating them equally? All right, Jin is tired, you can all leave, Qing the Emperor thought for a second, Jin Guifei stays. Shu Guifei's expression changed slightly. Seeing the Emperor had already closed his eyes to rest, she could only close her mouth. She looked at the mirth on Jin Guifei's face and felt that her smile seemed to be mocking her. Coming out of Tianqi Palace, the smile that Shu Guifei had pasted on disappeared and her face darkened. She glared icily at He Hing and Chu Qingju before taking He Yuan and Qin Bailu with her as she left. Chu Qingju turned and saw the smile on He Heng's face. As she stepped on the white jade steps, she asked, "What is Wang Yi smiling about?" "Fu Huang's body is recovering, naturally I'm happy." He Hing smiled as he glanced at her. "Don't you think so?" "This kind of event is naturally worthy of joy." Chu Qingju smiled as she nodded. She turned her head to look at He Ming and Luo Wenyao walking behind them. "The Fu hired a Shu cuisine chief a few days ago. How about Si Shu and Si Daimei come for the noon meal?" Luo Wenyao turned to look at He Ming. Seeing him nod, she then answered, "To taste the gourmet food at Erbo and Ersaw's Fu, it is our good fortune." Chu Qingju smiled. "Eating is a type of good fortune. You don't have to say these things to me." Luo Wenyao gave a bashful smile, evidently embarrassed. Seeing the situation, He Ming bowed in apology to Chu Qingju. Seeing him protect Luo Wenyao, Chu Qingju smiled. All right, if one didn't know, they would think that I, as your Saw, is bullying you too. Spare me." He Hing smiled as he saw the intimacy between Chu Qingju and Luo Wenyao. Holding her hand, he interrupted, "I think you should pay attention to walking. Otherwise, a trip and fall would damage your looks." "I'm not a child," Chu Qingju sniffed, but docilely allowed He Hing to pull her along. Luo Wenyao followed behind them. Seeing the clasped hands of the two, a smile appeared on her face. When Shu Guifei returned to her palace, she let all the servants in the room leave. She looked at her son, who also didn't have a good expression, and asked in a lowered voice, "Your Honor, I'm afraid that the emperor might want to pass the throne to He Hing." He Yuan's brows furrowed. "How come?" Shu Guifei carefully narrated the chain of events before concluding, "The emperor's heart has changed." She really found it hard to accept that the emperor would one day choose Wei Shi and slight her. But just now in Tianqi Palace, the emperor treated that whore Wei Shi much more intimately than her. After just 2 short days, why was it this way? Was it that the emperor was angry that she didn't serve him? But her body had become uncomfortable, so she had to leave. Or was it that Wei Shi said some words disadvantageous to her in front of the emperor? Are you sure that Fu Huang said that Lao seemed similar to Xiandi? He Yuan thought deeply for a long time, and shook his head to refute. "It can't be so. Fu Huang has never treated Lao better than me. Why would he suddenly change his opinion? Maybe it's Jing Guifei who's purposefully spreading false information." "I got suspicious as well, but you also saw the attitude the emperor had towards Wei Shi today," Shu Guifei coldly argued. "The emperor's heart has definitely changed. We cannot wait to be defeated. Your Honor, I won't let what belongs to you be taken away by others." He Yuan ranted. "Fu Huang really feels that Wei Shi and her son is better than us. Is he blind?" When Qin Bailu, who was in the corner, heard these words, her heart jumped and she couldn't resist pushing deeper into the corner. She sneaked a look at the ugly visage of He Yuan and couldn't seem to remember what the Rui Wang she fell in love with 2 years ago looked like. "Your Honor." Shu Guifei heard He Yuan's words, her expression instantly changing, and disapprovingly said in a small voice, "How can you even say such things?" But previously, Fu Huang clearly said the only one of importance in the Hogong was you, and the most loved imperial son was me. But what is the reality? He Yuan became more and more furious. Wei Shi just cared for him during his illness, and his attitude completely changed. Is that how he would act if he'd really cared for us? But he's the emperor. Shu Guifei's eyes reddened and she used her handkerchief to wipe the corner of her eyes. She cried, "If his heart changes, what can we do?" "There's always a way." He Hing looked at Shu Guifei, his face gradually calming. "Wei Shi can try to compete for favor. Mu Fei, you have so many years of feelings with Fu Huang, how can you lose to her?" Shu Guifei thought about the coldness in the emperor's eyes as he looked at her and nodded. As for He Hing, He Yuan gave a cold smile. No matter who he resembles, only the person who laughs to the end is the winner. Before, I was more favored than him. In the future, I won't lose to him. In Tianqi Palace, Jing Guifei looked at the sleeping emperor. She slowly drew her hand out of the emperor's hand. She looked calmly at the old man on the bed, the corners of her lips rising. What was having missed these years? The emperor was becoming fonder of making jokes, but it was a pity that after these many years, this kind of joke wasn't funny anymore. Chapter 78. It was the first time that Luo Wenyao visited Duan Wangfu. She found that Duan Wangfu was more magnificent and refined than Qing Wangfu. She couldn't help squeezing He Ming's hand, feeling sympathy for this person who was walking beside her. He Ming assumed she was nervous and smiled at her. Whatever you like to eat, tell her so. We shouldn't try to scrimp for them. Even if you want to be frugal, you couldn't save. He Ming smiled as he led the others into the front hall. After everyone had sat down, he teased, "Your Saw takes great care of her eating and wardrobe. With her here, it isn't possible to save. Wang Yi dislikes the fact that I eat too much." Chu Qngju took a teacup from a Yahuan and sniffed upon hearing his words. "I'm happy you have such a good appetite, I wouldn't dislike it." He Ming smiled as he ordered, "Qian Chang Xan, go hasten the kitchen and have them make that peanut pastry that Wang Fei likes. Otherwise, your Wang Fei won't forgive me today." Nonsense. If they didn't know, they would assume that I was a shrew. Chu Qingju put down her teacup and burst into laughter. Si Shu and Si Daimei are still here. You just want them here to laugh at me. Saw, I didn't see or hear anything. He Ming smiled as he followed up, Ji and Saw are indulging in conjugal love. Us, being Didi and Daimei, can only be happy for you, not laugh at you. Luo Wenyao used a handkerchief to cover the smile on her lips. Even though she didn't speak, the uneasiness between the four people slowly disappeared. Chu Qingju could see that He Ming was desirous of becoming closer to He Ming. He Ming evidently accepted He Ming's goodwill, so her own attitude towards He Ming was very carefree. On the matter of how to treat people, if He Ming called himself second, there wasn't anyone that dared call themselves first. As expected, the topic slowly skewed towards the matter of He Ming being attacked. He Ming held a teacup as he put in, "Based on my opinion, SID's attack by assassins might not be connected with Sandy, but the case of Jiang Nan definitely is connected to Sandy." He Ming nodded and said nonchalantly, "Since Fu Wang isn't investigating further, I will not think more. Either way, I'm fine right now. It's not important who did it as long as I can have a good life from now." Hearing the words, Chu Qingju felt that He Ming was probably the least ambitious and the most easily satisfied among the four He brothers. But it was due helplessness. He Qi was the eldest. He Ming had a useful mother. He Yuan had the favor. What did He Ming have? His mother wasn't favored, his father didn't care for him. If his own attitude wasn't good, how would he live? Maybe He Ming understood in his mind that these matters had the shadow of He Ming, so he would say all would be well if he could have a good life in the future. This was expressing his attitude towards He Ming. The meaning might be that he, as the younger brother, was siding with Lao Er. The peanut pastries came up. Chu Qingju picked a piece to put in her mouth. Her gaze fell upon Luo Wenyao and saw her eating pastries thoughtlessly. Chu Qingju smiled. It didn't matter if she knew or she really didn't know, but this girl wasn't stupid. At least, she seemed smarter than Qin Bailu. Days always become better, He Ming smiled. It's very good that SID has such goals. He Ming smiled upon hearing the words. Even his eyes were full of visible mirth. They chatted, and when it was noontime, the four of them sat at the table and watched the Yahuan present the dishes. The dishes of Shu cuisine were mostly sour and spicy. The heat color alone gave the viewer the impression of very hot and delicious. Even though most of the table was Shu cuisine, there were some bland dishes. Chu Qing-ju had no immunity to good food. In her own home, she didn't want others to serve her. One of the great pleasures in experiencing delicious food was reaching out to the dishes she liked herself. The Sichuan poached fish was made from the tenderest part of the fish belly. For the meat, one had to use the fresh meat from the pig's leg. The pickled cabbage in the dish was well-aged pickled cabbage so that when one took a sniff, their saliva would spill. The fish head and tofu soup were densely flavorful, the roasted tendons were crisp yet smooth. There were also some mushrooms with cabbage, steamed wild mushroom and other such dishes. The raw ingredients for those dishes weren't any special things, but the taste that was created was able to make Chu Qing-ju eat another bowl of rice. Chu Qing-ju would never try to preserve her impression in front of He-hing through eating one less bowl of rice. After she elegantly yet swiftly finished 2 bowls of rice, she rinsed her mouth and washed her hands. Afterwards, she slowly wiped her mouth as she looked at the table full of food. She spoke with some regret. "Tonight, let's eat hot pot. It's much more enjoyable with 4 people." Luo Wenyao knew of hot pot, but before she married, her family rarely ate it. Her family felt it was inelegant to crowd around a pot to cook food. Hearing Ursa's suggestion, she felt her heart move. She couldn't help asking, "Is it 2 soup pot?" "Of course. If the moon tonight isn't bad, we could set the pots up in the pavilion outside and admire the moon as we eat. We don't have to care about the rules of not talking while eating. Tell some interesting stories, it would be great." Chu Qing-ju felt that hot pot needed more people gathered around telling tall tales. If they didn't happen, then hot pot wasn't perfect. He-ming didn't think that Ursa would be like this in private. He looked with some degree of shock at Ji and found that his gaze was on Ursa, a wide smile on his face. In this instant, he understood. "All right, if that's the case, then Sid and Dreamy won't leave tonight. After the evening meal, just sleep for the night at the Fu. It will be refreshing." He called in Ming-he and ordered him to let the kitchen servants prepare. After he finished, he added another sentence, "Prepare more wild mushrooms." Yes, Ming-he knew that Wang Fei liked eating all kinds of fungi. Wang Yi was taking care of Wang Fei. "Dreamy, this is your first time at the Fu. Why don't we take a walk? After eating, if one sits too long, they'll gain weight." Chu Qing-ju smiled as she stood, giving the 2 He brothers the room to talk. "Then I will trouble Ursa." Luo Wenyao also stood and followed Chu Qing-ju to walk out of the front hall. She herself also knew that Wang Yi most likely had things to discuss with Duan Wang. He-ming watched as his wife followed Saozi out before asking, Ge, Ursa's paternal family, Chang de Gong Fu was on He-yuan's side. Even he knew that. She doesn't have good relations with the Chu family. These years, she endured a lot from the Chu family. He-heng's brows furrowed. When the Chu family was mentioned, it always caused a bad mood. "The people of Chang de Gong Fu, you don't have to have any qualms. Your Ursa won't care about it." He-ming nodded. "If that's the case, the matter of the Chu and Liang families, I'll get someone to leak. Families like this one, they shouldn't have been kept for this long." He-hing remembered the wrongs that the Chu family had done to Chu Qing-ju and coldly ordered, "Keep them alive. Living but having nothing, it's better than death." He hadn't expected that Ji would dislike the Chu family that much. He-ming nodded in a daze. He remembered that the Chu family had a daughter who was a Chia in Yuan's Fu and mused, "I wonder if Sanji would help. What Lao San is like. Is he the kind of person to give aid for a Chia?" He-hing raised a teacup to take a sip and scorned, "He always enjoys having people revolve around him. When would he revolve around someone else?" That's true, these years, He Yuan was arrogant even when interacting with him, much less a Chisher. A smile appeared on his face. That Chu family is quite pitiful. Luo Wenyao and Chu Qingju took a tour of the gardens before going to the Jinyuan. When she saw the furnishings in Chu Qingju's room, she couldn't do anything except gape. Glass lanterns worth cities, a night luminous pearl of great craftsmanship and a variety of other finely made decorations. She had heard her grandmother mention when Duan Wang Fei married, the Chu family didn't add much to the dowry. What she brought to the Wang Fu was the dowry that her birth mother had when she married into Chang de Gong Fu and the additions that the Tian family and other relatives and friends added. Luo Wenyao's dowry could be considered to be very generous, but seeing that the decorations in this room were finer than the objects in her dowry, so she knew very clearly, these objects wasn't Duan Wang Fei's dowry. Rather, it was what Duan Wang had brought for her. Thinking about the gift that Duan Wang Fei added to her dowry before she married, Luo Wenyao couldn't help but exclaim, Beau treats her saw so well. Hearing this, Chu Qingju gave a light laugh. She pulled the other to sit by the window. A white jade orchid was blooming right outside the window. See, Shu treats you very well too, Chu Qingju smiled as she looked at Luo Wenyao. I can see that Shu treats you truly well. This is the best scenario. Hearing this, Luo Wenyao gave a sweet smile. For some reason, she felt it strange that her saw used the word truly. She hesitantly glanced at Chu Qingju, her gaze somehow coming to rest at the orchid outside the window. This flower is very beautiful. Many in Jing City like to plant orchids in their gardens because of the rumor was if orchids were planted in the home, their lives would become better and better. Some lovers like to exchange orchids and use white jade orchids to represent the sincerity of their love. Luo Wenyao didn't know what the truth was, but she believed that if a man would go to such an effort to seek out these objects to give to a woman, no matter what, the woman occupied a spot of some size in his heart. She looked at the faint smile on Chu Qingju's face, hesitantly offering, a person's heart can be seen slowly through interacting. There isn't a clear line between truth and lies. The hand Chu Qingju held a teacup with slightly paused. She looked at Luo Wenyao. She didn't know if the other was speaking of He Ming or if she meant something else. She followed Luo Wenyao's gaze to look at the orchid outside the window, smiling and responding, you are right. It's not so easy to separate truth and lies. It's better to work towards a better life. Saw's words are sensible. Luo Wenyao smiled as she nodded. She pointed at the orchid outside, just like the orchid flower, the days would become more and more beautiful. Chu Qingju blew on the surface of the tea and lazily glanced at the orchid. She suddenly remembered that a short while ago He Hing had sent over a set of orchid hairpins and jewelry. But due to the fact that He Hing would always send things over all the time, she had never worn the set of orchid jewelry. Musing, she curled her lips. A good life was controlled by people. Was it possible to live well just by depending on a flower? Chapter 79. As expected, there really was a glowing moon. The servants in the Fu had already prepared everything that was needed. He Ming and Lu Wenyao looked at the heated lanterns hanging in the pavilion and then at the two tables nearby, holding of a variety of foodstuffs. They finally understood what Ji meant by his earlier statement of, no need to save. The four sat down around the table, each one taking a pair of the public chopsticks to start cooking in the pot. Even the not-so-favored He Ming had rarely ever cooked on his own, and his ignorance about how long something could be cooked created laughter and lifted the mood of the meal. Luo Wenyao looked at Chu Qingju rapidly picking up what she liked to cook in the pot. She always knew when to take the ingredients out when they were perfectly cooked. Luo Wenyao couldn't help but look down at the people of Chang de Gong Fu. Saw was the eldest daughter, no matter what had happened, but Saw had suffered so much. Otherwise, why else would she be so familiar about such matters? Ignorant of the fact that she had become a little white cabbage in the snow in Luo Wenyao's heart, Chu Qingju contentedly drank a small bowl of silver tree fungus and date soup to wash away the spiciness in her mouth. She felt that she was 6/10 full before commenting, "It's been some days since I ate hot pot. This soup that our kitchen has made is getting better and better. It's alright to occasionally eat some. If you eat it every day, you won't like any kind of soup." He used a pair of public chopsticks to serve a tea tree mushroom into her bowl, smiling as he said, "You ate so much meat today that it will be hard to sleep." Chu Qingju picked up the tea tree mushroom to dabble in the condiments dish. After she finished eating, she pouted, "Then later, you have to play weiqi with me." "Fine," he grimaced. Turning, he started to put what Chu Qingju liked to eat into her bowl. He poured Luo Wenyao a small bowl of silver tree fungus and date soup. Seeing Ji and Saw proficiently serve each other what they liked, he thought inside that he hadn't done enough. "CD, your wounds have healed. You've gotten married now. Fu Huang has said that us brothers have to put more energy to state affairs. Why don't you go spend some time in the Ministry of Revenue? That could be considered as going to learn something new." He raised a cup to Ming and drank before continuing, "Even though I am the second eldest, I'm not even 2 years older than you. You should pay more attention to state affairs." Ming didn't refuse. Out of the 4 brothers, other than Ji, who was 7 years older than him, Ji and Sanji weren't that much older than him. But both Ji and Sanji had been involved in state affairs for a long time. He was the only one who'd attended court after turning 16, but he still didn't have anything to do. Fu Huang never spent any attention on him, his mother wasn't favored, his maternal clan really didn't have anyone. The result was that he had muddled his way for 3 years at court yet had never accomplished anything. Now that Ji had said this, it was like giving him a helping hand to let him establish himself at court. "Thanks Ji, you definitely will learn how to do things, and not disappoint Ji." Ming raised the wine up, "You toasts Ji." Sitting on the side, Luo Wenyao gave a grateful smile to Chu Qingju. Even though she didn't know the whole story, now that Duan Wang was willing to help her Wang Yi, from the bottom of her heart, she was grateful to Chu Qingju as Duan Wang Fei. A whole meal ended in contentedness. The 4 admired the moon for a while as they digested before returning their rooms. He naturally accompanied Chu Qingju in playing a weiqi game before gathering up the beauty into their warm den. A round of physical pleasure later, the 2 contentedly fell asleep. In the guest room, Luo Wenyao took down her adornments and laid with Ming together on the bed. She hesitated for a long time before inquiring, "Wang Yi, does Erbi want to win you over?" "Silly Wenyao, Ji has no need to win me over." Ming leaned back on the headboard, gathering the other in his embrace. "What I have, Ji also has. What I don't have, Ji still has. If I had not married you, Ji might not have been willing to help me." Luo Wenyao stilled. She suddenly thought about her second aunt in Xiang Qing Ho Fu and Duan Wang Fei, who was very close to second aunt. Instantly, she understood. She hugged Ming in sympathy, comforting in a small voice, "That's because Wang Yi is capable, so Erbi wants to help you. Otherwise, it doesn't matter who you married. It still wouldn't work out." Ming smiled as he patted her back, his laughter filling the entire room. Because of Qing the Emperor's serious illness, the people of Jing City were extremely anxious. However, after a few days, the Emperor started to take a good turn and could even continue to attend court. Those whose intentions had risen settled down. Soon afterwards, the imperial censor wrote a complaint against Chang de Gongfu. He detailed the scandals of Chang de Gongfu, such as allowing servants to victimize others, putting out loans, buying the common people's land at low prices by using their positions. He also mentioned that 16 years ago when the wife of the Duke of Changde had just passed away, he immediately married a new wife, which was a dishonorable thing. He even allowed the new Duchess of Changde, Liang Shi, to cheat others by using the position of the Duke and abused the original wife's daughter as well as the Shu daughters. Instantly, the court erupted. They had heard what happened with Changde Gongfu before, but no one could spare the attention to take care of it. But now that someone had censured them, naturally all these matters became unpardonable crimes. Even more so, there was no one in Jing who didn't know that Duan Wang was very much in love with his wife. What Changde Gongfu had done, wouldn't that Duan Wang unhappy? Of course, there were those who looked at Rui Wang. Liang Shi's daughter was Rui Wang's Chia. If Rui Wang had any intentions of protecting them, it wouldn't be wise for them to throw stones while the other was down. After they watched for a few days, they found that Rui Wang showed no reaction to the matter. Then everyone understood. Rui Wang didn't have any desire to look after the matters of a Chia's paternal family. Since Rui Wang wasn't going to act, and Duan Wang didn't have any good feelings towards Changde Gongfu, the hearts of the court officials were like a mirror. Within a few short days, the memorandums that censured Changde Gongfu fell like snowflakes in front of the emperor. Numerous minor and major matters were revealed. Instantly, Changde Gongfu became the mouse that everyone was yelling to kill, as if one look at them would dirty their eyes. When Chu Qingju heard that Changde Gongfu was being censured, it was the third day since the matter had started. After she'd finished listening to Jin Zhan's report, she paused for a beat before inquiring, "Is there no one asking for mercy on behalf of Changde Gongfu in court?" Jin Zhan shook her head. She took a look at Wang Fei's face and found that Wang Fei didn't seem to be worried at all for Changde Gongfu before continuing. Nubi heard that many are censuring the Duke and the Liang family. The emperor is very angry about the matter. Chu Qingju nodded, "I understand." Due to how much he disliked Changde Gongfu, he definitely wouldn't ask for mercy for the Duke of Changde. The best case would be that he didn't try to step on them even more. But according to He Heng's style of conduct, he wouldn't do it himself. No matter what, on the surface, the Duke of Changde was his father-in-law. If he came out personally, others might purposefully exaggerate it and it wouldn't be good for his reputation. Then again, the kind of person that He Heng was, his best skill was doing everything in the dark. For him to be like He Qi or He Yuan and personally act, it would be very hard for him. He Heng didn't want to help Changde Gongfu. The intelligent people at royal court understood. And He Yuan didn't have any intentions of giving aid. Altogether, everyone understood that Changde Gongfu was taking its last breaths. They said that not many gave coal in the snow, many dropped stones instead. People who censured Changde Gongfu and the Liang family naturally popped out. Hearing people mention the crime of the Duke's marriage to a new wife before the bones of the first wife was cold, Chu Qingju felt elated. Chu Tianshi was very unfortunate to have met a man like the Duke of Changde. Additionally, Chu Tianshi's cause of death was suspicious, but her death was said to be illness by the Duke of Changde. Now that the people of Xiangqing Hofu had this chance, would they give it up? As expected, Tianjin could send up a memorandum on the exact day. The general meaning was that his Jiejia's cause of death was suspicious. Liang Shi was married for only 8 months when she gave birth to twins. He was suspicious that the Duke of Changde killed his wife so that he could marry Liang Shi because she had been pregnant. Once the news came out, Jing became even noisier. That year, Liang Shi truly did give birth to the twins not even 8 months after marriage. The statement given out at the time was that she was carrying twins which caused an early birth. But thinking of it now, the matter was fishy. If nothing was wrong, why would the Duke of Changde be in such a hurry to marry her? Could he not even wait for the 100 days after his wife's passing? When the matter was exposed, those who had relationships with Chang de Gong Fu and the Liang family all stopped interacting with them. The two families didn't even have anyone to ask for aid. As Chu Qingju heard the new situation each day about the Chu family at court, her mood became better and better. But who knew that on this day, when she had just finished listening to Jin Zhan tell her the gossip, one of the servants came to report that the Duke of Changde was requesting to meet her. The Duke of Changde. The memories in Chu Qingju's mind of the Duke of Changde were very apathetic, and there was even a hint of hate. She heard the Duke had come, and hesitated before standing to say, "Order the gatekeeper to let the Duke of Changde wait in the side hall of the Wang Fu." "Mistress, you are going to see the Duke." Mu Jin looked worriedly at Chu Qingju, clearly worried on her behalf. "There's nothing to fear. Now, I am Wang Fei. Do I still have to fear that he will reprimand me for Liangshi?" Chu Qingju gave an icy smile. "Jin Zhan, help me dress." Jin Zhan quickly complied and the group of Yahuan in the room joined in. Seeing the Yahuan bring in the different hairpins, jewelry and the grand clothes, Chu Qingju picked an extravagantly lavish wide-sleeved Xinguan robe. In her memory, didn't the Duke of Changde like taking up the role of the father to reprimand the original owner of this body? Then she would let him know what it was like to be suppressed by authority. The Duke of Changde waited a long while outside the gate of Duan Wang Fu before someone came in to lead him inside the front gate. He followed the Taijian in front to the side hall of the Wang Fu. Liang Hong, who had been following behind, took out a pouch to shove in the hand of the Taijian leading the way, asking in a fawning tone, "This Ji, do you know when Wang Fei will be free?" He had accompanied his Yi Fu, to quite a few homes. Some straightforwardly didn't receive guests, some allowed them inside, but after filling their stomachs with tea, they still didn't see anyone. So he couldn't resist asking. The Taijian took the pouch and politely smiled as he replied, "This little Gong Zi is too polite. This one is just a servant, and doesn't know anything about Wang Fei. You two can wait here, it should be only a while before you can meet Wang Fei." He made a bow before quickly leaving. Soon afterwards, servants came in to serve them tea and refreshments. Liang Hong restlessly sat on the carved pear tree chair. He looked at the servants of the Wang Fu standing in the room with their tastefully chosen attire and strangely felt that he couldn't breathe. Husband of mother's sister /N. Chapter 80. Don't Dirty Ben Wang's place. The Duke of Changde held a teacup for 15 minutes. Looking at the silent door leading to the hall, it stirred up memories of the cold receptions he had received in other homes. He had endured it then. Now that he was at his daughter's place, he still had to sit on the bench. His face instantly darkened and he heavily slammed the teacup to one side, ranting, "I've raised such a good daughter. When her own father comes, she still acts like a Wang Fei. It was a waste raising her all those years." Liang Hong's heart jumped. He looked at the servants in the room who didn't react at all. He appeased, "Ifu, Duan Wang Fei has to take care of such a Wang Fu. She wouldn't be as free as she was before her marriage. We've only just arrived, don't be angry. If Duan Wang Fei heard what you said, she would be hurt." "What does she have to be hurt about? After she'd married Wang Yi, she's never even seriously looked at her father. She came to my birthday banquet and threw a tantrum in front of the whole Fu. When the Duke of Changde thought about the contents in Tianjin censure memorandum, his face flushed. How is she my daughter? From the looks of it, she shouldn't be named Chu. She should have been named Tian." Liang Hong listened as his words became increasingly nasty and felt frantic inside. Right now, they had come to ask for aid, not to throw around their temper. How Yifu had treated Duan Wang Fei these years, he had personally seen it. If Wang Fei was willing to help, that would be a blessing from the heavens. But Yifu had to maintain the face of an elder. If Wang Fei saw, even if Duan Wang Fei's personality was gentle, she wouldn't stand for Ifu's attitude. He was anxious but didn't dare say more in case he provoked Ifu to get even nastier. He carefully looked at the servants in the room. These people were like statues. No matter how nasty Ifu's words were, they didn't even move an inch. It was as though he and Ifu didn't even exist. The conduct of these servants made Liang Hong feel the strictness of the protocol of the Wang Fu. Duke Chu, are you angry because this Fu's tea and pastries aren't suited for your appetite? Xiao Ganzi asked scornfully as he came in with a lower-ranked Taijian into the hall. He glared furiously at the Yahuan serving in the hall, admonishing, useless beings. Remember what kind of place this is. You don't even know how to serve people. Go switch Duke Chu's tea. Liang Hong hurriedly interjected, this Gong Gong is too courteous. The tea and pastries are all good. There's no need to trouble anyone. How could he not detect that this Taijian was pointing at the mulberry but swearing at the locust tree? But they had come here to seek aid. Furthermore, the pattern on the robe of this Taijian was different to that of a normal Taijian. His position in the Fu wouldn't be low. The saying was that the gatekeeper of the Prime Minister's gate was a fourth-pin official. How could he even dare to offend the Taijian who had some status in the Wang Fu? Xiao Ganzi turned to look at the young person in front of him. He mockingly raised his hands in a fist to Liang Hong as he said, this Gongzi must be Duke Chu's son. This one greets you too. I don't dare receive Gonggang's greeting. This student is Liang Hong and Ifu's nephew. Liang Hong returned a bow and tried to hand a pouch to Xiao Ganzi. Liang Gongzi doesn't have to be this courteous. This one is insignificant and doesn't dare to take Gongzi's gift. Xiao Ganshi unhesitatingly pushed aside Liang Hong's pouch. Please sit, our Wang Fei will be here shortly. Honger, sit down. Today, I'm going to see when this good daughter of mine will arrive. I've waited this long and she's just sent a Taijian to brush us off. Once she became a Wang Fei, her heirs have become arrogant enough that she won't even attend to her own father. The Duke of Changde impatiently looked at Xiao Ganzi and Liang Hong, his actions and tone of voice showing just how much he looked down upon this Taijian named Xiao Ganzi. Xiao Ganzi smiled instead of getting angry. He came forward and bowed, saying, Duke Chu, don't be furious. Our Wang Fei isn't as idle as Chu Sanxiaojia. Every day, she has to manage the Fu and all the matters of the different estates. That's awfully busy work. After hearing that the Duke had come today, she went to dress and groom herself in a rush to see you. One can see just how much she respects you. Upon hearing this, Liang Hong's heart became even more bitter. What was not as idle as Chu Sanxiaojia? On the inside, he blamed Ifu for his fiery personality and improper manner of speech. He also was angry at Chu Qingju for not respecting them. But he also knew that the current circumstances were disadvantageous to them. If Ifu kept acting like this, when Duan Wang found out, the matter would be even more difficult to diffuse. The Duke of Changde snorted icily, if she respects me, why would she let me wait for so long? Just as he'd finished speaking, the half-closed door to the hall was suddenly pushed open. The hall was instantly saturated with light. The Duke of Changde and Liang Hong turned to look and saw Chu Qingju wearing a red floor-length dress as she stood expressionless at the doorway. Behind her were more than 10 Yahuan and Taijian. Without even speaking, they made others feel intimidated. Chu Qingju looked indifferently at the Duke of Changde who sat still on the chair. She held Mu Jin's hand as she walked into the room. Once she'd sat on the center seat, she then lifted her chin slightly to look at the standing Liang Hong and the still-seated Duke of Changde. This was the first time that Liang Hong saw the married Chu Qingju. Last time, he had heard that she came to Ifu's birthday but he didn't have the chance to see her. Seeing her today, he finally understood what was called the world turned upside down. The woman in front of him wearing the majestic clothes hadn't changed in appearance, but he felt that something was different. He began to feel intimidated now that he was standing in front of her. Barely suppressing the fear inside, after Chu Qingju sat down, Liang Hong came forward to raise his hands in a greeting. This student Liang Hong greets Duan Wangfei. Chu Qingju barely glanced at him. She took a sip of the tea that was on the table, then frowned and criticized, "Today's tea is too bitter. Change it." "Yes," Mu Jin bowed to take the teacup. She turned to give it to the second-rank Yahuan behind her. Very quickly, a Yahuan handed a new cup to her. She turned again to place it on the table beside Chu Qingju. Liang Hong obediently bent his body as he stood, too afraid to even move. "Liang Gongzi doesn't have to be so courteous. Please sit." Chu Qingju raised the teacup once again. She raised her eyelids slightly to look at the Duke of Changde. "Why have the two of you come today? You are a Wang Fei now. Don't you know what has happened to your paternal family?" The Duke of Changde accused in a heavy voice. "Or is it that you don't even care about your paternal family at all?" "Oh." Chu Qingju raised an eyebrow. "Are you talking about how Liang Shi took advantage of the status of Changde Gongfu to let the Liang family abuse the people of Lanqing County, or that you took a new wife before your first wife's bones had even cooled, or how exactly did Ben Wang Fei's mother die?" She spoke slowly, her tone was very calm, but it made Liang Hong, who had been sitting restlessly, feel a chill on his back. He looked at how Duan Wang Fei's red-nailed hand slowly caressed the teacup. The strings in his brain were so tight that they almost broke. He was now regretting the fact that he'd accompanied Yifu to Duan Wangfu. "Is this the attitude that you, as a daughter, should have towards your father?" The Duke of Changde was a bit shaken, but seeing that even the daughter who had once been so submissive to him dare talk like that to him, the anger inside erupted. He stood and pointed at Chu Qingju, cursing, "If I knew that this would happen, in the beginning, I would have choked you to death and not let you live to anger me today." Upon hearing this, Chu Qingju gave a sweet smile to the Duke of Changde. Then she threw the teacup in her hand onto the ground. The expensive government kiln teacup instantly shattered into pieces, the crisp sounds frightening the Duke of Changde, who shrank back in response. She spread out her hand and looked at her nails, which had been dyed red. She looked at the Duke of Changde from the corner of her eye. "Why aren't you cursing? Weren't you so happy cursing right now?" The Duke of Changde unconsciously took a step back. He opened his mouth but found his throat had turned wooden and couldn't say a word. "I'm the kind of person that has a bad habit. That is, I hold grudges." Chu Qingju lowered her hand and smoothed her dress. From Mu Jin's hand, she took another teacup. She smiled cheerfully as she spoke. "Liang Gongzi, in all those years that you've lived at Changde Gongfu, come say how the Fu has treated me." Liang Hong's face was full of sweat, but he couldn't say a word. He might be a member of the Liang family, but he also knew that Yimu had not treated Duan Wang Fei well before her marriage. Now that Duan Wang Fei was asking him, he couldn't say well, but couldn't say not well, and could only remain silent. Take a look, even the people of the Liang family can't say a word. It can be seen just how well Changde Gongfu treated me, Chu Qingju sneered. Coming here today, were you hoping that I could persuade Wang Yi to help Changde Gongfu? She saw the Duke of Changde nod his head and the smile on her face became even more visible, but why? The Duke of Changde's tone warmed greatly. He carefully looked at the broken teacup on the ground. I know that the Fu had been lacking in some aspects with the way they treated you, but no matter what, it's your paternal home. If a scandal came out of your paternal home, you would be dishonored as well. Would Duan Wang still regard you well? If He treated her like He Yuan treated Qin Bailu, then this matter would have really impacted her. But right now in Jing, who didn't know that Duan Wang Fei wasn't close to Changde Gongfu? Who didn't know that Duan Wang and Duan Wang Fei were deeply in love? Thinking about it, Chu Qingju suddenly wondered what He Heng was after, since he treated her so well. The Tian family. But the Tian family were only ever loyal to the emperor, that was the mantra passed down from their ancestors. Would they even support He Heng just because she married him? He Heng wouldn't neglect her because of the Tian family. When he had just married the original, he kept her in good food and comfort but wasn't even close to her. The original's personality had been weak. Other than what Tian Luoshi had taught her in the rare occasions they had met, there were no other elders to teach her the dark secrets of the Hoyuan or how to treat marital relations. That's why after her marriage, the Shirjia were able to sneak in and cause her to lose her life. The tragedy that was the life of the original had all come from the Duke of Changde. It was amazing that he was still shameless enough to come here to yell and holler. The fact that this kind of man could live until now, it was really by the virtues of his ancestors. The Duke of Changde saw Chu Qingju's head had lowered in thought and assumed that what he said had moved her. He continued, "Don't believe what the Tian family said. You have to know that we are of one family. Can you believe what outsiders say?" Chu Qingju, who was so disgusted by his words that broke her train of thought, sarcastically responded, "Even outsiders were willing to add so much to my dowry when I married, but why was it that this family of mine wasn't willing? It's all shameless and dishonorable." Chu Qingju heard the words and suddenly lifted her head to look. She saw He Heng with a dark face come striding in from outside. This time, the Duke of Changde didn't dare remain seated. He and Liang Hong obediently performed a greeting and stood in the center of the hall, but they didn't dare to look at He Heng's angry visage. When He Heng heard the Duke of Changde say that he would not regard Chu Qingju the same because of Changde Gong Fu's scandals, the fire in his heart couldn't be suppressed any longer. He looked at the broken teacup on the floor and walked to sit next to Chu Qingju. He patted her head as he said, "Anger harms the body, there's me for all matters." He glanced at the Duke of Changde, furrowing his brows as he asked, "Duke Chu, you weren't satisfied with making your wife die from anger, so you came here today to Ben Wang's place to show off your might. Who gave you the guts?" "Wang Yi, please understand that this lower official only said it out of anger." The Duke of Changde wasn't sure if Duan Wang had heard what he had said before. He raised his hands and cautiously responded, "The matter of my wife, it is purely Tianjin Ku slandering this lower official. Wang Yi cannot trust that person." "Ha!" He Heng raised an eyebrow as he looked at the Duke of Changde, "that there's a person who is as shameless as the Duke in this world. It has really broadened Ben Wang's knowledge." Wang Yi. The Duke of Changde didn't think that Duan Wang would speak so mercilessly and couldn't help but look at Chu Qingju. "Someone come and see off the guests." He Heng smiled icily and snorted with disdain, "Don't dirty Ben Wang's place." Chu Qingju looked at He Heng's state and couldn't help but burst into laughter. Some rough labor Taijian saw off the Duke of Changde and Liang Hong. Xiao Ganzi stood at the gate and from high up, looked down at the two people at the bottom of the stairs. He slowly drawled to the people beside him, "In the future, clean your eyes when you receive a card. Don't accept just anyone. Otherwise, some will think that they are worth something and yell and shriek at Wang Yi and Wang Fei. If one didn't know better, they'd think that he was the Wang Yi." He clapped his hand, and in front of the two, he closed the gate to the Wang Fu. Liang Hong looked at the tightly shut gate of the Wang Fu. He suddenly realized that from beginning to end, Duan Wang Fei hadn't called Ifu father once. He looked at the man whose face was full of discontent and anger, and cold sweat formed on his palms. If Imu had treated Duan Wang Fei better in the beginning, maybe it wouldn't be like this. This time, if Biao Mei couldn't persuade His Highness Rui Wang, he was afraid the Liang family would be finished. Chapter 81 Inviting Humiliation. The side hall was very quiet. Chu Qingju sat on the chair as she looked at the shattered cup on the floor, her expression dark. He Hing indicated for the servants to sweep away the broken shards of porcelain. He rarely saw such a dazed expression on Chu Qingju's face. But he didn't want to see it anymore, so he couldn't resist going up to her and deliberately rubbed her face, smiling as he teased, "What, you don't have any more energy after that outburst?" Chu Qingju raised her head to look at the mirth on his face. She looked seriously into his eyes, and from his purposely relaxed expression, she found the concern that was hidden behind his smile. She forced a smile. "I have just discovered that he's not worthy of my mother and I." She wasn't clear as to why the Tian family had married their daughter off to the Chu family, but she'd heard that it was due to a promise made by the previous generation. These parents, because of their own feelings, didn't care for their children's desires and carelessly gave them away in a marriage. They glorified the marriage of their children as a means of proving their friendship with each other. Or did they believe that because the elders were friends, their children would be happily married and the husband wouldn't neglect the wife? The reality was always harsher than the ideal. Chu Tianshi didn't receive gentle treatment from the Duke of Changde just because their elders had been friends. Did the old Marquis of Xiangqing, who hadn't passed away at that time, ever regret it? She wasn't a person from ancient times, so she couldn't understand their mentality. But if she had children in the future, she would be reluctant to treat them that way. "I know," He Hing gathered the person into his arms, quietly promising, "The people who had bullied you in the past, I will remember them for you. We will live for a long time, so don't harm your body for these people. We will find an opportunity for you to bully them back." Chu Qingju sat on the chair as she put her head into He Hing's lap. She listened to the man holding her tell how she could bully the people who once bullied her. That bit of grief in her heart had already disappeared without a trace. She turned to wrap an arm around him, laughing as she rubbed her head on his waist. The servants all cautiously lowered their heads, not daring to look at the two Zhuzi. But a smile was on the mouths of Mu Jin and the others. It seemed that no matter how Chang de Gongfu was, Wang Yi wouldn't lessen his affections for Wang Fei. These days, all the servants of Rui Wang Fu were trembling with fear. It was an open secret in the Fu, which they didn't dare to spread outside, that Wang Yi and Wang Fei weren't on good terms. The fact that Wang Fei extremely disliked Chu Ce Fei of Shi Su Yuan was something that everyone knew. But because Chu Ce Fei was favored by Wang Yi, no servant dared to offend Chu Ce Fei. In the days after the details of Chang de Gongfu's circumstances leaked, there was more idle talk among the servants. Even though they didn't dare to openly mention it in front of Chu Yusu could still detect that the eyes of the servants as they looked at her weren't right. As she faced the curious or disdainful stares of the servants, she could only bitterly endure and not show even a hint of discontent. "Chu Ce Fei, Wang Fei asks to meet you." A Taijin came in and bowed to Chu Yusu nonchalantly. He said in a neutral tone, "Wang Fei said that if Chu Ce Fei doesn't have the time, it's fine not to go, but then Wang Fei will reject the card of the Duchess of Changde." It must have been an inconvenience for Gonggong to pass on the news. "I will go immediately." Chu Yusu didn't seem to notice the slight the Taijin gave her, smiling as she stood from the chair. She also let Yao Shi shove a pouch to the Taijin. It wasn't that she wished to endure it, but this Taijin in front of her was most favored by Wang Fei. She was just a Shijie, so she didn't dare offend him. After the Taijin left, the smile on Chu Yusu's face completely disappeared as she ordered, "Yao Shi, help me dress." By now, Chang de Gongfu must be a mess. She didn't even need to guess to know that their so-called friends and relatives were hiding far away. Qin Bailu disdainfully looked at the card in her hand and carelessly threw it to one side. "This Chang de Gongfu is such a joke that they actually came begging to our Fu." Ru Hua, who was standing behind her, inquired in a small voice, "Wang Fei, if that's the case, why would you allow Chu Shi to see her paternal family? Wasn't that giving Chu Shi an opportunity? Why not let her see? Qin Bailu smiled coldly. I want her to see if Wang Yi would really aid the Chu and Liang families for her. Ru Huan looked at Wang Fei's icy stare and didn't speak any longer. By now, Wang Fei and Wang Yi were at the stage where they had nothing to say to each other. Wang Fei's hatred towards Chu Shi became more and more evident. Now that the situation had turned out like this, unless Chu Shi was spurned by Wang Yi, there was no other way for it to end. A short while later, Qin Bailu saw Chu Yusu dressed in a slightly old, plain dress as she came in. She looked at this woman who respectfully bowed to her in greeting, a hint of mirth appearing on her lips. The Duchess of Changde asks to see you. I'm not a cruel person, so I will allow your mother and you to see each other at Shisuyuan. What does Chu Fei think? Nubi thanks Wang Fei. Chu Yusu almost bent in half. She looked at the disdain in Qin Bailu's gaze and gritted her teeth as she turned and walked out of the gate of Jingyuan. Qin Bailu didn't really sympathize with her. She wanted to see her begging. The more Chu Yusu's family situation worsened, the more happier Qin Bailu became. Taking Yao Shi's hand to support her as she returned to Shisuyuan, she sat for a long time before a servant led Liang Shi into the door. Chu Yusu looked at her mother whose complexion had become more fragile, and stood to welcome Liang Shi. Sewer, Liang Shi looked at her daughter, her tears pouring before she even spoke. Our Fu is not in a very good situation. Chu Yusu supported her in sitting down and comforted her. Mother, don't cry. First, tell me what's happening outside. Now that she was in the Hoyuan of the Wang Fu, she didn't hear much news. She only knew that there were many people at court who were censuring her paternal family but didn't know much else. Liang Shi wiped away her tears as she gave a complete narration of the condition of her home. When she mentioned that Chu Qingju wasn't willing to help, her voice held hatred. If I had known that damned Yadu would one day act like this, I wouldn't have left her alive in the beginning. After hearing this, Chu Yusu gave a bitter smile. She said helplessly, Mother, now that it's like this, it's useless to complain. Right now, no one is willing to help us. Not even the heavens or the earth would respond. Even your deity was persuaded to leave the Eastern Mountain Academy. I had originally planned for him to attend the autumn examinations. Now that it's like this, how could your deity get a good score? As she thought of her son, Liang Shi's expression became even uglier. The most horrid is the Tian family. They had to pull out the matter from 10 years ago. Chu Yusu felt that it wouldn't end very well this time, but looking at her mother's face, she couldn't say it. Sewer, you are this Wang Fu Si Fei. Why don't you beg Rui Wang? Rui Wang is most favored by the emperor. If Rui Wang could say a few words on behalf of our family, it would be more useful than anything else. Liang Shi tightened her grip on Chu Yusu's hand. Just help our Fu in thinking of some more solutions. Her hand hurt from being gripped so tightly. Chu Yusu felt bitter inside. She was only a shijie, she had no qualifications to ask Wang Yi to do something for her. But once faced her mother's pleas, she could only nod and decide, I'll go beg Wang Yi. If Wang Yi doesn't agree, Rui Wang will most certainly agree. The fear on Liang Shi's face halved. She looked at the beautiful face of her daughter and stated confidently, I've even heard it outside. Rui Wang likes you very much. If you begged, why wouldn't he agree? Likes? Thinking of Wang Ye's attitude towards her these days, Chu Yusu could only squeeze out a small smile and didn't say a word. Mother and daughter didn't manage to speak for much longer before the steward came in to rush them out. Liang Shi assumed that it was Wang Fei who got jealous of her daughter and left unwillingly. As she came out of Rui Wang Fu's front gate, Liang Shi thought with some smugness, so what if Chu Qingju was a Wang Fei? She wasn't willing to help her Lao Yi. In the end, didn't the hopes of the Fu lie with the daughter she gave birth to? The moonlight was like frost. Qin Bailu looked at the bright moon outside and asked Ru Hua in a mirthless voice, "Wang Yi went to Shi Siyuan?" Ru Hua nodded. "Just now, someone saw Wang Yi heading that way." Qin Bailu unexpectedly laughed out loud. It was carefree yet full of sorrow. The laugh grew louder and dissipated into the night. He Yuan released his hand which had been holding Chu Yu's chin and allowed her to tilt the cup for him to drink wine. He mockingly put his hand at the softness of her chest. "Why is Beauty so enthusiastic today? Is there something she wants to ask for?" Chu Yu's heart jumped. She then gave an enchanting smile and said, "What is Wang Yi saying?" "Chia sincerely wants to serve you." "Really?" He Yuan examined her closely. Just when the smile on her face was going to break, he said, "Such a pity." Originally, Ben Wang was thinking that if you had something to ask, Ben Wang would try to help. "Since you don't have anything, a minute of the spring night is worth 1,000 gold, so we should live in the present." Sliding into the man's arms, Chiyu Su reached out to Tracy Yuan's chest. "Chia does have a small matter. Wang Ye's eyes are keen to have found me out." "Oh." He Yuan held one arm around her, the other hand holding a wine cup as he asked, "What matter does Beauty have?" Chia wanted to ask about Chang de Gong Fu. He Yuan pushed the person in his arms away, not caring that she had fallen to the floor. He Yuan placed the wine cup on the table and sneered, "Ben Wang didn't think that you would be shameless enough to mention this matter." Wang Yi, Chu Yusu's expression changed. She knelt in front of He Yuan, reaching out to hug his leg as she pleaded, "Wang Yi, please save Chia's paternal family." Chia, from beginning to end, Ben Wang had never even looked at Chang de Gong Fu. He Yuan sneered and kicked her aside. He slowly stood. "If it wasn't for finding your eyes somewhat attractive, Ben Wang wouldn't have taken you into the Fu." Just to Chia, "Did you really think that you were Ben Wang's heart?" He didn't even look at the woman he had kicked, now sprawled on the floor. He adjusted his clothes, so disappointing. It seems that Qing Lu of Dong Yuan is still more tactful. Chu Yusu covered the chest that had been kicked and struggled to sit up. She only looked at He Yuan's back as he unhesitatingly left. The silver moonlight illuminated his shoulders, and for no discernible reason, made her feel colder. Chapter 82. The curtain drops on Chu and Liang. In the end, the Chu family didn't manage to find anyone to help them. Even though they couldn't examine what had happened 16 years ago, the Tai, who had been requested by Tianshi after she had given birth to a daughter, was still alive. He had taken the pulse of Chu Tianshi quite a few times. The pulse had been very steady with no hint of illness. However, the final outcome was that by the end of the month, Chu Tianshi had passed away due to illness. He was inwardly suspicious, so he clearly remembered, even after all these years, that he had been the first person to take Chu Tianshi's pulse at that time. The testimony of this Tai didn't prove that Chu Tianshi was killed by Chang de Gong Fu, but once combined with the others' facts, soon after Chu Tianshi's death, the Duke of Changde had been in a rush to welcome the new wife, Liang Shi, the dragon and phoenix twins who Liang Shi had given birth to not even 8 full months after entering the Fu. All these series of coincidences was enough to prove that Chu Tianshi's death wasn't accidental but deliberate. Once the proof was revealed, it shocked the entire court. If a man was lustful, it meant that his morals were deficient, but it wasn't enough to make others dislike him. But to harm his wife for a woman on the outside, that was being an animal in clothing, a person that everyone could beat up. Qing the Emperor had originally heard that Duan Wang Fei was estranged from her birth father. Hence, he had been slightly dissatisfied with Duan Wang Fei. Since the marriage had been decreed by him, he couldn't act on it. But once this matter came out, and Qing the Emperor looked at the memorandums which described how Chang de Gong Fu had abused the eldest daughter and Shu daughters, he felt that his second Erxi didn't have an easy life. He couldn't help but say to Jing Guifei, who had been grinding ink for him. Originally, Jin had thought that this was a woman who didn't respect her parents. I didn't think that she had such a tragic past. It was fortunate that official Tian cares for his relatives. Otherwise, R11 might have been someone else. Jing Guifei didn't look at the memorandums and only responded, "Emperor, you don't even know that Henger's wife is extremely filial." Normally, when she receives something interesting, she would impatiently deliver it to Chia. In the beginning, Chia thought she was too childish, but only now does Chia know that this child most likely thinks of Chia as her own mother, so she would think of Chia at every turn. The rims of her eyes reddened. Such a good child, but Chang de Gong Fu abused her. It really is too cruel. Qing the Emperor was extremely moved by what Jing Guifei said. He reached out to pat her hand and comforted her. "Now you are her popo, that makes you her mother. She remembers beloved Fei. One is that she is filial, the second is that you are close to her. It isn't just that she is a good Relevan, you are also a good popo, which made the two of you become more intimate." Jing Guifei was so comforted that she smiled through her tears. At this time, a Taijian from the outside reported that Shu Gaif was asking for an audience. Jing Guifei had a conflicted expression on her face as she said, "Since Mimi has something to ask Emperor, then Chia will retreat." "There's no need." Qing the Emperor reached out to pull Jing Guifei closer, not allowing her to leave. He turned his head to look at the Taijian. "Tell Shu Guifei that Jin has no time and won't see her." "Emperor." Before Jing Guifei could finish, she was interrupted by Qing the Emperor. "Beloved Fei, come see how this drawing is." Qing the Emperor rolled open a drawing, and started to admire it with Jing Guifei. Jing Guifei smiled as she went forward a few steps. After closely examining it, she nodded and praised, "This drawing has both mountains and water, the sky and earth are vast." Not even taking into account how good the artist's skill is, one can see the artist has a generous personality. Whoever drew this, if Emperor can hire such a person to enter politics and work, he will become a pillar of the country. What pillar of the country? This was just a product of Jin's leisure time. Qing the Emperor contentedly put his hands behind his back. Seeing the shock and awe on Jing Guifei's face, he said happily, "How about Jin teach you how to draw?" Jing Guifei naturally went with the flow and allowed Qing the Emperor to enclose her hand and start drawing. Watching as a peony formed under the brush, Jing Guifei glanced outside at the steadily darkening sky, an indiscernible hint of mirth at the corner of her lips. Shu Guifei looked at the tightly closed gate to the palace hall and unwillingly turned to slowly leave. What was not having the time? How could that whore Wei Shi accompany the emperor? 20-something years ago, Wei Shi didn't manage to enchant the emperor, so how could Wei Shi, 20-something years later, manage to captivate the emperor? This kind of matter, she wouldn't believe it, and no one who heard it would believe it either. Because the matter was connected to the mystery of Chu Tianshi's death, along with the series of events that had occurred at Chang de Gong Fu, Qing the emperor was so angry that he wanted to execute the Duke of Changde. In the end, because he had remembered that the Duke of Changde had the grace of giving birth and raising Duan Wang Fei, he exempted his death sentence. Instead, he took away the Chu clan's title, and demoted the family of Chang de Gong Fu to a Shumin. The Duke of Chang de Gong Fu was imprisoned in jail. Those not in jail were thrown out of Chang de Gong Fu. As for the small family that was the Liang family, Qing the emperor didn't have to waste much energy. He just sealed the Liang Fu and erased the scholarly honor of Liang Hong, and decreed that the next 3 generations of Chu and Liang family could not attend the examinations. The Chu family who had caused so much fuss in Jing City fell down just like that. Among the people, there were even ones who had started to use Chang de Gong Fu as the basis for many plays. A fickle man who killed his wife to marry again. A cruel father and stepmother who abused the previous wife's daughter. And how the first wife's daughter endured such humiliations and in the end, married an ideal husband. No matter how much the story had changed, the Duke of Changde and Liang Shi were eternally known as the most malicious villains, and Chu Qingju was the abused little white cabbage. After she had finished reading how she had married an ideal husband and the aggressive and contemptible paternal family story, Chu Qingju laughed so much that she cried. As expected, the plays were based on reality but larger than life. When did she ride a 12-person gold sedan? When did Wang Yi, full of rage, drag every one of the Gong Fu out to be beaten? Those points were too drastic. Mu Jing saw Wang Fei crying from laughter as she read the story and came forward to attentively help rub her stomach. She smiled as she commented, "Wang Fei, don't choke." Nubi heard another version before. How about Wang Fei take a listen? Tell me, Chu Qingju took a drink of tea and asked in interest. After Mu Jin finished narrating, Chu Qingju felt that the creativity of the ancient people was extremely strong. The main idea of the story was that she, the little white cabbage, endured the snow in the middle of winter to buy red bean buns for Liang Shi. She struggled in her journey in the midst of the harsh winds wearing very little and encountered Duan Wang on a white horse. The two of them fell in love at first glance. In the end, a romance that moved the heavens was written. Did the logic of this story get eaten by the author? Liang Shi would eat red bean buns in the winter and not sparrow's nest. And in that kind of weather, who would be selling buns? Even if people were selling, who would go buy them? The most strange was that in such a snowstorm, He Hing wouldn't sit in a sedan or carriage outside but would masochistically ride a horse. Just as Chu Qingju was going to laugh herself silly, Ming He unexpectedly came over. He said that Wang Yi wanted to take her out of the Fu. Chu Qingju didn't know what it was for, but seeing Ming He's state, it was an emergency. She glanced at her attire to see if anything was wrong and didn't change before following Ming He out. When she got on the Wang Fu's carriage, Chu Qingju saw He Heng was already sitting inside. She asked with some confusion, "Wang Yi, where are we going? The play has to go on till the end. If you don't get to see the conclusion, there's no meaning." He Heng smiled and held her hand. He ordered the driver outside, to Changde Gong Fu. Chu Qingju looked in surprise at He Heng. After the carriage started moving, she asked, "Why does Wang Yi want to take me there? Today is the day that everyone of Changde Gong Fu is being evicted completely. That place was where you used to live. Before the Fu is sealed, I'll get you to check if there is anything wrong." He Hing cheerfully responded, "I know that Qingju is a person who remembers the old times." Hearing He Hing give such a dignified reason for going to spectate, Chu Qingju smiled and followed. "Wang Yi is right, I am one who remembers the old times. The saying, 'the clothes should be new, the people should be of the past,' had its own logic." When the carriage made its way to the front door of Changde Gong Fu, there was a great mess at the gate. Loud sobbing and pleading made the entire place sound like the market. Ming He came up to pull the curtain at the front of the carriage slightly open, allowing the two Zhuzi inside to have a perfect view of the great play occurring outside the Fu. The uniformed imperial guards were forcefully escorting some people who didn't want to leave. On the ground were dropped luggage and clothes. There were many servants who had left with their heads down. Seeing Duan Wang Fu's carriage, they carefully came forward to bow before hurriedly leaving. Chu Qingju watched apathetically as Chu Xiaojie supported Chu Lao Tai out the front gate. Behind the two was Liang Shi, her face full of panic. Chu Wangji was trailing Liang Shi, his crestfallen attitude like a duck plucked of its feathers. The family stood at the gate, watching as the servants who had once served them all leave. Gradually, the crowd grew smaller and smaller, and then there was silence. Chu Lao Tai watched as the plaque, on which Changde Gong Fu was written, got taken down and smashed onto the ground. Then continued watching as the crimson-red doors of the gate got sealed with papers from the government. A long time later, she sighed, "Karma, karma." She pointed at Liang Shi, who was wiping her tears, to rant, "That year, if it wasn't for taking this person of bad luck into the Fu, would my Chu family be like this?" By now, Liang Shi wouldn't listen to what Chu Lao Tai Tai said. She instantly retorted, "Lao Tai Tai might have forgotten that it was Lao Yi who had married Erxi into the Fu. Lao Tai Tai, rather than blame me, blame Lao Yi." Chu Lao Tai Tai was so angry that she staggered. It was only because of Chu Huishua's support that she barely managed to not fall down. "Did the Liang family teach you to not respect your elders like this? There's not even a Liang family now. Wasn't it impacted by your Chu family?" Liang Shi felt that her paternal family had been indirectly affected by the Chu family. She instantly shrieked, "Why is Lao Tai Tai turning around to blame our Liang family?" "Mother, don't speak anymore." Chu Wangji heard Liang Shi's words becoming nastier and couldn't help wading in. "Now that our family is like this, what are you fighting over? I will disturb everyone. This is our Wang Fei's gift to everyone, please receive it." Chu Wangji heard that this voice didn't belong to a normal man and turned around. He saw a Taijian wearing a blue robe standing behind them, a pouch of silver in his hand. He couldn't resist looking behind the Taijian and saw a magnificent carriage parked not too far away. Inside the carriage was Duan Wang and De Jie sitting together. Because of the distance, he couldn't distinguish the expression on the two's faces. But in this instant, he felt that he was entirely mired in an awkward and embarrassed state. "You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."